1957, just a greenhorn, leaving school and looking for a job. Going into broadcasting was something that I dreamt of. But that's only meant going into radio, because my old school, Holy Child College, still on the same site in Obalende, 2 streets away from the old NBC. I still can't forgive whoever changed the name to something else that is being called now FRCN. Because if the BBC remains BBC 100 years after the founding fathers, dreamt of starting television, radio from, all the war years and learning a bit from America. It all started from America. Because we were taught about all this. Every time they took us from school to take part in, school's debates on radio, we just walked across. It's all in Obalende and Ikoyi, Obalende/Ikoyi. So I dreamt of doing something along the line. And then one of my teachers left us high and dry. He went to be a newsreader on radio. Marie Tabio, who later became Mrs. Irikefe. Then we had people like Tom Adedoyin and Eno Souq. We used to listen to them on radio on the old, you wouldn't know anything about that now, the rediffusion. It was just, a little box in your home, and everybody looked forward to either listening to the 7 o'clock news in the morning or 6 o'clock or 7 in the evening. So that was all really all I had to do with broadcasting. And who was going to take me there was another matter altogether. Who would take you, little 16, 17-year-old girl, into broadcasting? But one had been bitten by the bug then. So, and only God knows where whatever dream you had was going to lead to. We read poetry, we did radio show, stage shows in school. Catholic schools were very good for that. And my old school, just celebrating 150 years of its existence, just down the road from here on Broad Street. The nuns, they were all white nuns. No Nigerian nuns at the time that we were growing up. So all the dream they had, this kind of dream that we have now, going to England. But they were coming here to teach us. So I had learnt a lot of poetry. I had taken part in Festival of Arts, and I had gone to the biggest hall we had then was at King's College, which was also down the road. Means of transportation was your SS foot. No BRT, no bicycles or whatever. So we did it all just walking around and learning from our teachers. And of course, our mentors were the nuns, like I said. So in my wildest dream, there was no way that I was thinking of going into anything like broadcasting. That is going back to answer your question. But they had a lot of plans for the girl child. And not along the religious lines now. But actually, they came to actually engender this whole idea of pushing the girl child forward. And not just me, a lot of us. People like Mrs. Francesca Emmanuel, they also went through the whole gamut of all this dream that I'm talking about. Television itself was brand new in the world. I have to talk about radio because that was what I knew as a child. But television, when it started, we didn't even know. Maybe in America, and then it went to Australia, and then to France. No. France came after Nigeria. You wouldn't believe that, would you? That we were number 6. America, Britain, Germany, Australia, one other country, and coming now home to Nigeria, where you cannot help but give a lot of credit to the dreams of people like late Chief Obafemi Awolowo and one of his ministers then, Chief Anthony Enahoro. So that's how I believe this whole package was placed on their laps and sold to Nigeria, to the Western Nigeria government. On the radar were lots of other people like me who had dreams about becoming Miss Nigeria. So maybe that will now give you a little background about how I took part in the Miss Nigeria pageant, Western Nigeria, and I became Miss Western Nigeria. Somebody must have fine-tuned some little knots somewhere and said, okay, you probably might be able to deliver, because you are being interviewed when you go before the panel of judges, and somebody must have said, okay, that's a good material, you can come and take part in this. Before then, we had other people, Anike Agbaje Williams, Oliola Sokwe, who were working on radio. My dream was to work in radio, but then I missed that. And I was nursing, that dream of still going to radio. Never knew what television was all about. So maybe that answers your question, I'm not sure. But I took part in the Miss Western Nigeria pageant and I won. Took part in the Miss Nigeria contest and came second. So that meant that I didn't win. And if one of the, maybe the prize was to go on TV, it wasn't even there. It wasn't written into the, program that whoever did this, but the person was going to go to England. And so Helena Yemeluna, who won that contest, went to London and fulfilled her own dream. But I was still biting my nails, waiting for when I'll be able to get a job. There were other things that girls could do. You could be a nurse, you could be a teacher, you could be an assistant, a dental assistant. All those were things that young ladies, can, fulfill their dreams along those lines. They're still there. You still have young ladies. Mrs. Muritala Muhammad, the first time I met her, she was a dental assistant. Little did we know that her husband was going to be the head of state and she would be first. So you see, lots of things were there for the young girl who wanted to learn, who had the talent, and who wanted to perform, and who wanted to work hard. But now I don't know if girls want to work hard. All they want is, the table to be set, and then they come and, partake of whatever is there. It wasn't too difficult at the time that I was picked as one of the people to come and appear on WNTV. The audition was actually carried out before my time. I got involved in so many other things, trying to get a job, something to secure, something, to alleviate poverty. There was not too much poverty in Nigeria at the time because people could still make a living for themselves and, get by in society. But I was lucky that I had an aunt who was a nurse in the hospital in Ibadan, UCH in Ibadan. And she was married to an Englishman, and the man's friend happened to have been the man, Mr. Mathers, who was brought as one of the technical partners to WNTV. So we met at a dinner party, and just as you and I are chatting, I was only 18 plus. I was 17 when I took part in the pageant. But by this time I was growing up, and I thought I was a big girl. So I opened my mouth and I said a few things. And the man looked at me and said, "How come you are not speaking with a Nigerian accent?" And I didn't know what he meant because we were taught at St. Mary's to deliver whatever lines we were given to deliver. The Festival of Arts, I came second after an English boy from Corona School. And I was given a beating for coming second. Not because I didn't perform well, but because I forgot to curtsy. And one of the judges, I think, who was then Mrs. Abayomi, Lady Abayomi, said that I delivered my lines very well. So I was the Lord of Tartary, I would do this and that and the other. So I came second. And when I got back to the school, the nun, Sister Marieta, said, you were not paying attention. So whatever you do in life, you have to be consistent, you have to perform well. The way we're trying to do now, the way we're trying to project your voice and whatever it is you have to offer with a lot of humility, not trying to show off or to project your own image, or whatever message you have to deliver, you have to make sure that it is well delivered. The following year, St. Mary's Convent School, which is my old school, which is 150 years old in existence, went to the same King's College Hall, and we beat a lot of secondary schools. We came first. Pied Piper of Hamelin. Have you ever heard of that poet? Pied Piper of Hamelin was about someone who wanted to get rid of all the rats in Europe, and all he did was to play the pipe. So that is what we were more or less doing. That's what you and I have felt, being a Pied Piper, trying to get off all the ills in society. That's the main job of a broadcaster. There's so many things happening in the country, and it's only TV and radio that binds the country together. If the country falls apart tomorrow, we will rely on someone from radio or from television to make the announcement, to introduce the head of state who has just won the election, or the one who has just taken over. It's a huge responsibility. At that age, at 19, we had to introduce people like Chief Obafemi Awolowo on TV. We had to introduce people like Akintola, Oladoke Akintola, as the premier. And when everything broke down and it all went into smithereens, they brought in Chief Majekodumi as the administrator of the Western region. All this happening before our eyes. There were no other stations in the country except WNTV. And we were there, so we learned quite a lot. In fact, I believe that the whole country revolves around broadcasting. And if you are part of that organization, how would you feel at my age, at 80-something? As young people, perhaps you don't know all this history that I'm telling you about. It's a long, long story. But when you sit down, you have to put it all into perspective. You see that, well, some people are actually meant to be in different positions. Some people are meant to be doctors. Some people are meant to be nurses. But those of us that are in broadcasting, it's a huge responsibility. It's a passion. Something. Sometimes you don't even know how you got there in the first place. Or somebody may have discovered you. It's like being in Hollywood in those days. Someone has to develop. So you have the talent, the latent talent, and then somebody will discover you. So that's how I was discovered by Mr. Mathers at a dinner. I was put in that place because I had won the Miss Western Nigeria contest. If I hadn't done that, I probably would be somewhere in the kitchen washing plates, washing all the dishes. So there you are, if that answers your question. Well, there's no one that actually picks someone and puts you plonk without, I mean, of course, if you don't have any experience on the job, you have no business being there in the first place. But if I had taken part in 5.5 of Hamelin towns in Brunswick, I was only 13. By famous Hanover City, I was speaking like an English person. When I was only a Nigerian, little girl, being nurtured, by my mother, who was a seamstress, how would you ever get there? But you already have that background. that solid background on the rock, as it were. So by the time I was ready to go on TV, I had learnt from all the other, people that I mentioned their names earlier, like Anike Agbaje Williams. And I wouldn't say it was easy, because you always have that, butterfly fluttering in front of the camera or wherever. I think I took to television like I was meant to be there, with all humility. If I had been groomed by all these nuns that I have mentioned their names, they came to Nigeria to serve the people. They were not earning salaries, To become a nun, you have to take the oath of obedience, chastity, poverty, and all that. So you're not earning a salary. But whoever is there now is thinking of how much money he's going to get from whatever take comes from here, there, and yonder. So they taught us well. And nobody said you're going to go and appear on TV or you're going to be on radio. But just do what you're meant to do properly, with a lot of sense of responsibility and diligence. And that stands at the back of your mind. That goes everywhere with you, wherever you go in life. Even when I was nursing a sick child, my late son was a sickler, and I was meant to take part in Verdict 79 with my colleagues Kerry Ahmed and Adamu Aogi. They all came with me to the hospital, which is just next door here. And then we came back and mounted the podium and continued our business as if nothing was happening. He didn't die at the time, of course, but the job must go on. That is always there at the back of your mind. So my first night, I wouldn't say that I didn't have any jitters, that I was not nervous. But I was able to deliver, and I think that was the staying power. That was what kept me going, because other people came on board. I was not the only one. All the members of the board had their own, little nephews and nieces that they wanted to project on TV. They all came and they couldn't make it. But Anike and I kept going. And if you gave me a script now, I think I would try and... We didn't have too many, what do you call it then, teleprompters. Well, I was very good at, I had a photographic memory. So I was able to get hold of the script, and in less than 60 seconds, I'll be able to deliver it straight to the camera. That was one of the assets that I had also, which was God's gift. It's not by own might or whatever you think you have. You have the talent, of course, but also there has to be some other little bits of gifts that will help you to project the image of the professional. A lot of controversy. There is hardly any TV, radio, movie personality that can scale through that without any, because people are watching, people are trying to find their own little, base of criticism here, there, and yonder. You can't be a goodie, 2 shoots without, any, how shall I say it, problem here, there, and yonder. So everybody has their own way of looking at people. People say, well, what has she got to do? She went to take part in Miss Western Nigeria the other day. So what's the big deal about her? And then somebody will still add their own salt and pepper here and there. But I was lucky that I was being nurtured by someone like T.O.S. Benson, who was then our Minister for Information. And he felt that, you know, everything should not stop here. There were things happening in America. He made sure that my name was there. I was at the inauguration of President Johnson, Lyndon Johnson. And we commanded a lot of attention there, myself and my colleague who came from Lagos, the station in Lagos. And for the president to notice that there were two black people sitting behind him at his inaugural ball, I think it was very overwhelming for me because not many black people had invitation to that event. But Charity Adadevo and I were there, and he stood up and shook our hands where we were sitting behind, 3 rows behind the president. Then Kennedy had died, and we were still not seeing, you know, we were still feeling very hot about, you know, the loss of Kennedy. And here was the new president coming up. We were not particularly keen on being welcomed by him. But then, you know, things like that happen to you, and it makes headline news. 2 black people, they didn't even say Nigerians. They thought we were from Ghana because some journalists came around and said, how is your man Nkrumah? And we said, no, our own Prime Minister is Tafawa Balewa. They never heard of him then. But then they had to go and carry out their own study and find out who Tafawa Balewa was. And of course, the whole country was very proud of us that we went and actually stole the show at the inauguration of President Lyndon Johnson. So many other things happened. When I came to London, the British Information Office, they were trying to look for someone to host their program. That has happened to be around, so they picked me to host their program. But you don't ad-lib on any of those stations. Everything is written out. The questions, even your answer will be written. You can change it around a little bit, but they make sure that you said the right thing at the right time. So that was how we were able to gain attention. German television also invited us because they were interested in Nigeria. See how the German Chancellor came to Nigeria. That was what happened at the time. In 1963, we had just gained, we had just become a republic then, from being an independent station in 1960. By 1963, we then became a republic. And we were chosen to go and appear on German television in Berlin. And they wanted a little bit of culture. So Benson had his own band. So we were chosen to go and represent Nigeria then. Nobody knew who the ambassador was, but they wanted to know who was presenting something on TV. So that's how important television has been. And that, in fact, we were the first television in the whole of Africa. The very first station, WNTV, that was a call signal. WNTV, first in Africa. There's nothing like that now. Nobody wants to know whether you are first or second. But the station that is being run in Nigeria, I think, has the largest number of stations than any other country in Africa. We have about 21 stations, and now it's still, you know, still counting. And yours is coming on board, and so many others. I think next to America, Nigeria should have been the best country for television broadcasting in the whole world. There's not so many countries in the world that has as many stations as Nigeria. We only have to put our heads together. We only have to find joy in whatever we're doing. Sometimes when it's raining, people say, oh, it's raining, and they feel very bad about the rain. But if you look closely, behind that rain, there will be sunshine, there will be something else coming on. You see some silver clouds coming during the rain, but Nigerians don't have the patience to wait for that kind of thing. That's what television teaches you. If you're in the studio, you don't know what's happening outside. You just get on with the job. That's what we were taught. We were taught not by Nigerians. Even when we started, we couldn't go on air and ad-lib. There was always someone there, Mr. Blackledge, to write the script. And if you can commit that to memory and deliver it, you're home and dry. It's not everyone that has a gift, not everyone that has a talent. It's God-given. And if you listen as a child at 17, 18, 19, at my own age, I learned from school, and I was able to impart this into the job. So within a few months, we got double promotion, all of us, because we were doing very well. Anika Agbadin was excellent. Olasope was superb. And so many other people reading the news. We were the first female to read the news. Women were not allowed to read the news. Nigeria started it. BBC wouldn't allow a woman to pick up a script and read the news. But we were already there. So that's how we were able to gain this global attention that you mentioned. It's not easy. Not easy. Like I said, when we were taught by, not by Nigerians. But somebody came along the line and said, we don't have to speak like English people. You can just carry on and use your own parochial background. If you are a Robo man, you can speak English the way you like. That was his own idea. Because he didn't believe in us doing all this la-di-da and trying to, say things the proper way. But that watered down the standards a bit. Because then everybody, maybe he had a relation who wanted to appear on TV, and he wasn't allowed to because he couldn't speak like Ikenna Ndagoba or Bodelalade and things like that, or Friday Fode or Mike Nahuru. So somebody must have gone to him and said, because he doesn't speak like any of those people who were taught by, foreign teachers, people who had learned, people who knew what a DJ, we had a Bible then, that you had to pronounce your words correctly. So he came and said, now that I'm DG, I'm not going to tolerate all this, your English way of speaking. And some other people, of course, that watered down the standards. That's not our making. We were still ready to continue the way we were doing, but then they pushed us to the background. But there were others who were able to perform well. Ruth Benamesia, Opia, Siene Oweban, and of course Bimbo Oloyede, who was born in England. If you already employed those people to deliver the goods and to present your programs, you're not going to sack all of them because they speak with English accent. I don't see how that can be an offense. Cannot be, guilty of speaking English well, like the English people. But they then brought out other people. And you had the head of presentation. I became head of the presentation after I came under Guba. And you're trying to prepare your roster, and you wanted to put such people online to read the network news. They say, okay, bring somebody who can speak like the Radididu and do a little bit of Ewe on the side. It's part of our culture. So that is what is happening to TV broadcasting in Nigeria. It's all very interesting. So, this cultural milieu and bringing, a touch of Nigeria. Nigeria is doing well. In that aspect, in the music world, I think we're leading. Some of us who grew up on Handel's Messiah and Mozart, we have to sort of put our hands behind our back now and watch, all the way things have turned around, and Nigerian music is doing well. Afrobeat is raining everywhere in the world. So really you can't find faults with that. So when they watch a bit of Fela and his children and all his grandchildren doing well, then listen to the channels on TV, you have to take what you get from there as well. If somebody can wake up one day and say, why should your station be called the Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation? I say it should now be Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria. Tongue twisting. Takes a long time to come to terms with. If everyone wake up in the morning and say, this is Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation, you have the call signal. Da 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 da. This is the Nigerian Broadcasting whatever. How are you going to put that, into context with the new one? First of all, when you wake up, you don't know whether you are even coming out from the right side of your bed or not. You are going to have to face your audience and say, we are no more the Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation. We are now Federal whatever, which you don't even know where the man, who came up with the idea. He didn't even consult you, didn't even put it to test. If the British corporation, they are going to change from BBC after 100 years, they will ask the whole nation, they will say, where are we going to take this from? They will ask everybody, they will do a census, they will do all kinds of things, carry out all kinds of tests to see whether people will accept it from them. No. Nigerians are very hard and cut and dry. This is the way I want it. I'm the head of state, so I can change everything now, and all of you can start marching forward and march back again. Soldier go, soldier come. I think Fela would have been a good head of state for Nigeria, because he would have got some people marching the right way. So, I think that is what has happened to this country. But we will still settle down. The soldiers that have been marching since, they will do attention one day. And then we'll be able to sort ourselves out gradually. I think we're going through the right process now. People are beginning to find their own feet. If things go around, price of goods go up, Nigerians will find a way to come to terms with that. When we were growing up, everything was done, we won't say according to the colonial rules and regulations, but at least there were standards that were set down for you and things that you had to toe the line. This is the proper way to do things. But if somebody says, no, let's turn around and turn it upside down. First attack. The only thing that has happened to the whole world from Nigeria, that shook the whole world, that brought everybody attention to see what Africa has to offer the whole world. It happened here on this soil in Nigeria. I was a member of the ceremonial committee. I remember the opening ceremony. There were about 15 heads of state. We've never had anything like that since then. That is what we should ask ourselves. Every head of state that takes over from Nigeria should find out again. It's not from broadcasting that you can get the answer. You can get the answer from technocrats who had worked in all those areas. What happened? How come it couldn't happen again? It's like Armageddon. Every country was represented. Every culture was represented. Miriam Akiva was watching us and called us at the station one day and said, even the way we linked programs, they couldn't expect that it would be happening in Nigeria. We received phone calls. People were sending us bottles of champagne on the air. The links. Bimbo Oloyede was there with me. I was at the opening ceremony. I was yanked from there to come back to the station. From, interacting with the head of state or with our head of state at the time, to come and man the station, because what was phenomenal. How come we've not been able to do it? 77 years, how long ago was that? I was only 37 years old then. I'm going on 90 now. It hasn't happened again. We should examine that. Even the head of state that was there is still alive. Let us ask him again. Let us put him down and say, Oga, please explain to us what happened. Some people came up with a theory that the symbol that was used was fetish. That is what has happened and Nigeria has turned upside down. If that is acceptable, it may be superstitious in your eyes, but let us find out. Let's go call the Babalawo. Is it bad that it is a Nigerian that carved this image? And it is making news outside the world. Now you say, no, it is not good that Nigeria should be able to project an image that would attract the whole world. Something that will bring everybody on their knees. After the first attack, we were still recovering, just bathing in the glory of first attack. What's this artist, the blind one, who was not part of it, who didn't believe in it, came and had his own first act all on his own from America. Stevie Wonder, he came with his own team. We had to mount all the cameras back in the studio for him. He had his own 7-day festival here in Nigeria. What prompted him to do that? Other people came. They wanted to know what was happening in Nigeria. What has happened? We couldn't have another festival since then.
What do you think went wrong?
Nothing went wrong. Everything went so well that people wanted to destroy, our own Nigerian people wanted to destroy the glory that's this whole thing that emanated from it. It hit the whole world. People are asking, when you go to Britain, you say, what happened? Why aren't you having? I had a friend who was head of the he was from the British Guyana, a black guy. He was friends with everybody. He knew all Nigerians. Said, what happened? Why are you going to have another festa? Professor Ian Hall, he keeps asking me. Even if we can't have it because it was very expensive. Anyway, Nigeria had all the money. Even though we had a coup after, it was first of all the brainchild of Gawan. And then Muritala came on board. Muritala was killed, but in spite of that, they couldn't kill that dream of having a first attack in Nigeria. If we are able to bring out all those programs again, I think we'll be able to answer those questions. I'm still alive. There are a lot of people who will still want to know the answer to that. It's a very, very brilliant question that you have asked. I think if it was another country, we'll set up an inquiry and say, what happened? Can we resuscitate this whole dream? Some of the tapes that we had then in WNTV, some people put them in one place and set fire to them because they felt maybe somebody in their religious organization said, you are the one projecting all these things, so Nigerians are bringing idols around. Who gave them the idea to make the idol? It's God now. It's from God. Whatever thing you were able to put together. The Bible was put together because God loved the world so much and He wanted us to learn about things that had gone out from the time of Adam and Eve. God loved the whole world and created Muhammad and said, put people together and let them say Allah Akbar every day, morning, noon, night. God created so many wonderful things for us, so many images that we can imbibe from, so many things that we can learn from. People want to come and learn about our country. Instead, we say, we want our sculptures back. What are you going to do with them? You don't have a museum where you're going to put them. to make them thrive and people come here to Nigeria. It's a good idea for them to come, but if they learn about your country, what your people have done over the past 2,000 years. 2,000 years of Nigeria image was put together by the BBC. Nigeria went and tore it up in shreds. They tore it up. Said, what are you doing with that? What you call bad belly. I don't know if anybody sang a song with that title. If we maybe start from there and say, what do you do with your own bad belly? Some people, that's not a stadium. There is no theatre in England, in London, that I know, that I've gone to watch plays and things that have not been in existence for over 500 years. So many studios. We have one big one, the dream of Nigerians. And now we want to go and do banking there. We want to go and do trade. It's supposed to be for culture, for our own culture. Lagos State will be dragging federal government by the neck and say, no, we own the theatre now. And we want somebody to come and do something there. If we can only put all these things behind us, the evil that people have done in the past, people like Julius Caesar, when they were writing all those, when Shakespeare was writing all those things like that have happened in the past. We should examine them. Get people like Wade Soyinka to sit down and rewrite the whole history again. If they ask me questions like you're asking me now, I will be there to answer. Because I saw it all unfold before my eyes. The image of Nigeria will come tops. All the stations in Nigeria should get involved and do stories on this question that you've asked me. A very salient question, and I love it so much. That might be able to revive the image of this country and let us know where we are heading, in what direction, and bring us back to really the point of salvation. Well, I haven't seen it. I must have mentioned it somewhere. I think on one of the channels when they was trying to build the scandal around it, and I said, and I tried to put the record straight. That wasn't really what happened, and that it was from, I think it was from a book that was written by one of the wives that said that I was party to his breakdown of their marriage. And I was trying to put the record straight that that wasn't really the true picture. I have due respect. I have to, bow wherever I come in the presence of a president of this nation, past, present, or even present, yes. I hope I'll still be around when we have others coming on board. But I was taken aback that the head of state asked me a question that, because in the past, we were in the studios when the head of state came, and we were given scripts. If there had been, there had been several coups, and it's always the presenter or the station like that, the managers that take the brunt of the whole, the issue when things like that happen. You don't know who is coming. You don't know how many jeeps are going to be coming in. You don't know how many, what you call all those heavy equipment that they drive in as they are coming into the studio. You don't know where they are going to shoot the station down. Nobody knows that. It's only the people who have worked during that period that can relay those experiences. Sometimes you're at work in the morning, by the time you come back in the afternoon, the government has changed. And if you haven't got maybe your ID card, you won't be allowed into the station, or somebody can throw you in or into jail. So all this had happened in the past. Nobody has told any of these stories. People like Segun Bishola or Dr. Kolade. Somebody might come and say, so has happened. I was driving my former husband to work in the morning. I dropped him at the station. By the time I reached home, there had been a coup. Murtala had been killed. And they were under siege, the whole station. Just imagine that kind of scenario. Things like that had happened in the past. But Nigerians don't have that sense of history that wants to sit down and say, well, we want to ensure that it doesn't happen again. Of course, we'll pray that it doesn't happen again. And you wake up in the morning and somebody is announcing something else, different from what you have. A colleague of ours had been, pushed into something that he wasn't aware of. Those are kind of situations that have happened in the past. But this one, we were all dressed in ceremonial costume and trying to, I was the only one that was asked to stay in the presidential, what do you call it, special area that is demarcated for head of states on issues like that. And all of a sudden, the president is following me all about. And I said, this is getting too close for comfort. And I said, what's your name again? I said, my name is Julie Coker. I was trying to play innocent, that I didn't know what was happening. He said, hey, how much did this your dress cost? Can I have, sorry, sir. I don't think I'm the proper person to answer that question, sir. Yeah, you don't have answer. It's a bit unprofessional. I mean, not in the profession per se that we mean, but I wasn't prepared for that kind of thing. So I must have given a rude answer to that. And then, before I knew it, Ade Lanwa, who was then the head of Navy, came to me and said, you have been very rude to the president. The president said, he asked you a question and you couldn't answer. I said, good morning, Mr. President, sir. Because when we introduce them on TV, that's how we introduce them. We're now going to be addressed by a new head of state, Mr. So, sir. And I said, he should go and ask the president of Festac. I'm sure he has a record of what the question is asking me can be answered, better answered by the president of Festac. If he finds that unbearable or rude, then either that one is not doing his work well or I'm not doing my work well and I don't belong here. But I carried on regardless. Shortly after that, another top army officer, Joseph Garuba, that one was the tallest man next to Ufwe Bonye or the one from Mali. And he said, Julie, I know you can be rude at times. I said, not on this occasion. This is a wonderful occasion for the whole nation. And I'm trying to be my best behavior. And he said, the president said, I'm being very rude to him. He said, I know you, maybe you can say things. And I said, no, I never. He asked how much the dress cost. And I don't think I have an answer, which may contradict what will be on record if you really examine it thoroughly. I was getting very nervous at the time. So I dropped everything and disappeared from the scene, and I never went back again. But the thing reverberated right down to all the committees and members. My late auntie, what's her name? Kentebe, which was a lead commodore of their navy. She said, Julie, I think she heard that she was going to be sacked that day because the naval officer sent to her and said, you are the one that did this. And I said, can never, God forbid, can never reach me because I'm not in the forces. I'm doing my own job here as a professional broadcaster. I think it has reached a stage now where whatever you say might be taken against you, because there are so many people going to court now and people sent to jail, but things were not as bad as they are now, because some of the gory stories we hear and people being, penalized and sent to jail, I think it has reached an astronomical level that it's something that's actually, maybe it was there and people did not want to open the canker worms and let us see what is really happening. In my own case, it was a deliberate attempt on the part of an aunt of mine who felt that there's no child that should continue going to school at a certain age. And they were trying to arrange for me to get married to somebody. And it's a tradition of our people, in Delta, to find out whether the girl is still a virgin. Then they go and look for one old man. It's not this, the one that is happening is child abuse now. I don't know what to call that one. There are other cases too of children being sold into, prostitution and to apply a trade that by some madams, which is not really acceptable. But there are other areas that maybe some parents cannot pay for their children's school fees, so they send them, into child labor or whatever. I think every child should be given a chance to have, proper education. If Awolowo can start free and fair education to children, whether all genders, boys and girls, see what the results that have come out of that. But in some other parts of Nigeria, they believe that that it's not acceptable in their religion, and so they still keep the children down and send them into early marriage. And a lot of people have dealt, people like Dr. Johnson, they were in the forefront of that vanguard to liberate the children who have been kept, into Porda at age 13. And when they have children, they are not able, either they die, premature deaths from, being too early to go into pregnancies and have the children properly and things like that. Different stages, it's a very serious issue that actually I think has been well looked into, not by the United Nations or by, but Nigerian government itself should look at it more, more serious terms and try to find how to deal with it. But that's something that happened in some homes, which is now coming out now, which in the past, members of the family will not allow maybe a woman that is a victim. No, the child is a victim, but there are other, things that sort of trigger down the line, like a wife, for instance, who is watching her husband, trying to abuse children that are under their care. And the children definitely cannot, rise to the level that a child who's being abused at an early stage cannot continue with her education. So I have been involved in issues like that because I was affected as a 13-year-old when an aunt of mine felt that I should stop going to school. But I was rescued by another aunt. So I was lucky at the time. Not many people have been able to, get through all this kind of trauma. I was lucky that just at the time, the man was busy talking to some other people, and it's like somebody being kidnapped and another person coming to your rescue. So I was lucky at my own, to escape that unscathed and get on with my life. If I hadn't gone through, maybe I would have been having 13 children. It's good to have children so that the population will multiply. But then you have to make sure that the children are able to, get on with their education. And when you educate that child, is able to look after other children. I've raised so many children in the process, because I was able to earn enough money to take care of members of my family. And that is what everybody should sort of, try and rise up to that challenge. Our chief Folani Koka was the Babeto of Lagos. So, and I used to accompany him to the palace of Yekon. And someone then said, well, Yeto, why don't you let... He wanted his wife to be the Yeto, but she rejected it. She said she didn't want to because, she thought they were going to perform some fetish. It wasn't really fetish. My brother now turned to me and said, Julie, do you want the title? I said, no, it's not for me to say, because I wasn't terribly keen. But he said he was going to carry out all the preparations. And I said, well, if you're going to do that, why not? And the late Oba Adeyinka Yekon graciously offered me the title. I accepted and went through the ceremony. So I've been a Yeto of Lagos now for getting on 40-something years. We only have one majesty in England. And that is one of the oldest institutions in the world. Some other countries are getting rid of their heads of their traditional rulers. France doesn't have one, for instance. There are some countries in Europe, I think in Finland, that still have, kings and queens and all that. But Nigeria, every little village, every doorstep has one title. This is the palace of the so. It wasn't like that in our own time. We had only one Oba in Lagos. Now you have so many. You have several Obas. This one claiming this and that. It's Osa. It's whatever. After a while, there's going to be a clash. Maybe not in our own time. So if they are playing traditional roles, somebody will lay claim to some title that belongs to somebody else and another one. There's no end to it. So let them stay the way they are now. If they want to multiply, that has nothing to do with me because we don't have any say in that. It's not, because you can say now that this station is trying to sell this idea to be propagating an idea that should not be. I don't think anyone should play any constitutional role. If each one has its own, in the states at the state level, they take it, I think it's rotated. After a while, one steps down, another one takes over at that level. If they want to go and attend the meeting at the House of Assembly, that's up to them. But at the federal level, I think, no. No. I don't approve of it at all. Because then you have some woman coming on and saying that he's the one that is entitled to the title. It's not, I don't know whether any African country actually accepted that sort of thing. So Nigeria shouldn't start. Nigeria at certain points in any of these things. Once Nigeria starts, other people will start. And before you know it, the whole thing will skyrocket and another war starts. We have enough problem on our hands as it were now. No, we are lagging behind. It's such a terrible shame that we only have about 4 women in the Senate. It's ridiculous. We seem to be dancing backwards. In that regard, I think we're falling short. Totally. There was a time when there were more. There doesn't have to be more women in the Senate. I think there should be maybe 50%. Not even 30-something affirmative, whatever that they're going to Beijing to talk about. There should be more. There should be more women participating in politics. I don't know whether it's because, no. I don't want, I just believe that we should have more women in politics. Because women are more sensible. Our women are glamorous, they come out looking beautiful, but their contribution to national issues, I think, more. Look at a man who went to beat up somebody in the house, and he says he's a hero. Hero of where? That kind of man should not be allowed to even come and address the press. Maybe the press find it funny, humorous to feature somebody like that. There's no woman that will come on TV and speak like that. If you examine every single one of the men, they all have different issues. Some of them have issues about wives and men and things that they have been doing, or they are corrupt and they have been taking money, dipping their hands into different coffers. No woman would do that. I think women are more, serious-minded, and they address issues the way they should be addressed, and they will take more care of issues that affect the nation, girl-child issues, health issues. The men don't even care about health issues. They don't even want to know what's happening. The men even wear bigger agbadas than when they are going to the house. First of all, they should cut down on the amount of clothing that some of them wear. They spend more time thinking of their image, how they're going to appear. Since television has now gone into the chambers, you find that they spend more time, on things like that. And it's ridiculous. We watch other countries, the way their parliamentary issues are being addressed. We're not learning anything from that. We shouldn't be learning from them. They should be coming to learn from us if we're doing the things we're supposed to be doing properly. But if women are really at the forefront of all this, I'm sure that they'll be able to calm all those hot issues that erupt sometimes in the houses. With worry, my mother. I was brought up as an Ichekiri child by my mother. I was taught to sing Ichekiri songs, to speak Ichekiri well, to address issues that affects the people of worry. My stepfather, who also brought at the hand in my upbringing, was an Ichekiri man. So I think that takes care of all those things. Well, I was brought up in Lagos, so I have this dual kind of nationality, and I knew my father came from Egba land, but I didn't have much to do with him. I only had connection with the family, like Toye Koka, who was my uncle, who took care of me as well, but he was too busy doing other important things. But occasionally when they're having issues in the family, I'm invited like a stranger. But because I speak Yoruba very well, and I passed all my exams, and I used to do all my programs in Yoruba in Ibadan in those days, on radio, WNBS. So I can still hold my head high in that regard. I think I function very well. It's like the King of England. He sometimes goes home to his Greek family. When, Prince Charles, when he was prince, he used to go on holidays with his family from the Greek side. And in fact, it looks like some of them sometimes when they are together. So yeah, I think it's allowed. Well, one of the first one, my 40 years in TV, which is actually showcasing all the my life in broadcasting from the early stages, which actually should have answered some of the questions, was a textbook in Kenya for many years, because the minister came to Nigeria, and my GG then, Mohammed Ibrahim, had a whole box full of the books And he gave them to the minister. And when the minister got there, he requested for more copies of the book. I never got paid for it, but I was delighted that they found the book so interesting. So maybe I'll get someone to serialize the book on TV sometime. We tried to do it some years ago because I cannot be telling the stories all over again. This is about maybe that might sell the book, and also, you know, we get some media attention from sponsors and get things going. The sky will be the limit then. Well, eat well, eat the right food, type of food, eat chicory pepper soup, or anybody else who's cooking pepper soup now, because then you don't have too much oil. I think that damages certain things in the tissues. And if you want to avoid having cancer, there's nobody in my family that has ever died of cancer because of the type of food we eat. So get someone, you know, to prepare. You know, there was a time when chicory food was being prepared in the museum, and people used to go there to collect the ingredients and the menu, and people lived well. So like people are eating Chinese food, which is good. It's healthy and lots of vegetables. I recommend that for people. I'm not saying that very good health, but I still walk about on crutches. I don't know, my knees are not functioning very well. But still, if you say you paid me compliments, I accept it. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, Supporters Club had been there for 66 years when it was founded officially, but those who funded it were just doing it for the fun. We just come to the field, drum, sing and go. Nobody gave them any recognition. But I joined them in the year 1977. Well, I paid 2 naira to join. And how did I join? It was because of an incident that happened at the National Stadium. The Shooting Stars of Ibadan and the Bendel Insurance of Benin were playing the semi-final of the FA competition that year. And I had to go to enter the stadium. I paid 4 naira to watch the game. But while entering the stadium, the whole place was filled. And when I got inside, there was no place for me to sit down. So many of us were standing. Out there, people outside the gate of the stadium, there were more than the people right inside. So as at a point in time, while standing, some people just took me off ground and threw me into the crowd. And I started rolling until I landed on the culvert, concrete. Concrete slab. Before I knew it, over 50 people were on my top. And I could no longer breathe. So to me that day, it appeared I was going to die. But through the grace of God, I was able to wriggle out myself of that position. And the man directly on top of me had to leave, because what I did was by biting him, and I had to struggle to go under the concrete slab. And I was right there for the first half of the game, 45 minutes. I was right there under the concrete slab. I couldn't watch the game. It was the breeze that was coming from the outer part of the stadium that saved the situation. After the first half, you know, people will get up to go to the toilets, to go and buy drinks and meet their friends. I had the opportunity of coming out, and a good Samaritan gave me a small place to sit. Even at that, I was very unconscious. I was not comfortable. But the game ended. It was a drawn game. When the game ended, everybody left the stadium, but because I wasn't very comfortable, I had to wait in the stadium for like an hour and a half before I left. So when I left and I got home, 9 p.m. network news, breaking news. 32 people died in the stadium that day. And that, the thought came to me. I probably could have been one of them. But I thank God. That was what informed my decision to say, I will not go to the stadium again until I have the best way to go into the stadium without being killed, maimed, or injured. And I decided to move with those people, and I joined them. But then we were just doing it. Maybe 20 of us, 15, 30 of us, we meet under the trees of the National Stadium, and we go home. And since that period, immediately I became a member. I introduced what they call flag bearing. When from 1977 to 1990, every Nigerian team that came out of the tunnel or goes out there outside Nigeria to play, you will see the Nigerian green, white, green flag being carried by one person. It's me. I did that flag bearing for 13 whole years. Whenever the team is played, I will be there with them. Whether it's the Super Eagles, the under 20, the under 23, the Falcons, and the rest, all our national teams. Even our club sides going out to play Continental. When you see the green, white, green of Nigeria, I used to be the one carrying that flag. So I was with them, and I rose within the ranks from being an assistant secretary to becoming the national secretary and also the chairman of the disciplinary panel of the Nigerian Football Supporters Club. And by 1990, I was voted to be the chairman. That was when the thoughts of registering the club came. So when you hear that the Nigerian Football Supporters Club founder officially, because of its registration, I did the registration. Registering the club, I moved it from Lagos to Ibadan, Oyo State. I'm an Ibadan man. Charity begins at home, they say. So I went to Ibadan. From Ibadan, I moved to Bauchi. I moved to Abuja, Kano, Port Harcourt, all the states of the Federation. By 1992, I went to Cote d'Ivoire, in Abidjan precisely, to launch the Supporters Club. I went there physically, bringing the Nigerians together, those living in Abidjan. I formed the Supporters Club and launched it officially. I left that place, I went to Ghana. I launched it in Ghana. Leaving Ghana, I went to Gambia. I went to Burkina Faso. I went to Mali. I went to Republic of Benin. I went to Togo. I went to all the countries of Africa putting the supporters club in place in those countries. By 1995, I moved to the United States of America. I launched the supporters club at the Giant Sports Stadium in New Jersey in 1995. After that, I went to France in 1997 to launch the supporters club in France in 1997, because we were already thinking of going to France to play in the World Cup. And if the Super Eagles would not have enough supporters there, what will happen to them? Don't forget that I led the supporters club to the United States of America for the very first time we played in the World Cup in 1994. I was at the Copa America in 1995. That was when I had the opportunity of launching the supporters club in America. In 1996, I led the supporters club to Atlanta in 96. And the winning of the trophy, the goal in football event, made possible by the supporters club, support of the supporters club. Because when you listen, when that match, you remember that we played a match with Brazil in the preliminary stage, and we lost 1-0. But we had the opportunity again to meet them during the semi-final. And during the semi-final, Brazil had given us 3 goals. We were trailing 1-3 at the interval. And when the second half came up, we were given a penalty, I think 25 minutes to the end of the game. One of our players, I don't want to mention the name, but he knows, he lost that penalty kick. That was when God told me, sing this song. It's a miracle working God. It's a miracle working God. He's the Alpha and Omega. He's a miracle working God. Of course, my members chorused. Indeed, miracle came. We scored the second goal. And the then Minister of Sports, Chief Jim Nwobodo, came to our stand and said, Ladipo, I heard you guys singing, it's a miracle working God. It's like God is going to make a miracle to happen today. I said, yes. And we continued. I changed the song. I have a Father who never fails. I have a Father who never fails. I have a Father who never fails. Who never fails. Who never fails. Forevermore. Amen. Jesus never fails. Amen. Jesus never failed. Amen. Jesus never failed. Jesus never failed. Jesus never failed. Forevermore. We scored the third goal. Then another song came. Poya chukuna gaza. Poya chukuna gaza mere. Messiah yobiuma. Poya chukuna gaza. The match ended and there was to be the extra time. And that time it was a sudden death rule. Immediately I sang that song, my people chorused. And the ball was coming to Kanun Wakwo. He was backing the goalkeeper. Chested the ball, raised it up, turned around and tapped it to the net. And that was the 4 goals the Nigerian team scored against Brazil. And they started crying. And I decided to form another song. When Nigeria beat Brazil When Nigeria beat Brazil, oh, Bebeto start to cry. When Nigeria beat Brazil, why Bebeto? Because they pulled him out. They were thinking they were reserving him because they thought they would meet Argentina in the final. Unknowingly to them, that they will be beaten, they don't know. So I did that song, and we sailed into the final, meeting Argentina in the final. And that again happened. Argentina was leading us 2-1. But we came from 1-2 to beat them 3-2. Yeah, to answer your question, I did that to tell you what the supporters club is to the team. And what this man felt by registering the club is that I have that belief, and it is general, everybody must have it, that this is Nigeria, it's our country. We have to do something by giving it a positive image, whether in Nigeria or outside. You do know that all of us cannot be Mr. President of Nigeria. All of us cannot be governors, and not all of us will be members of the National Assembly. But all of us as Nigerians have special roles to play in giving our country a befitting and positive image. That is the reason why this man has been following football supportership all the time to date. Well, I want to tell you, like I said earlier on, the grace of God has been the secret. The other secret is that my members, I get them reoriented to believe in my vision. All of them supports what I was doing. They all love this country. They want to contribute their own to the good name of Nigeria. That has been the secret. And don't forget, any member of the supporters club should be referred to as a patriot par excellence, because they are not paid. They are not given any allowance. They use their time, their money, even at the risk of their lives, to support the cause of Nigeria through supportership. Well, majorly, it is funding. The challenges is funding, because if you have to support the team, yes, they are playing in Lagos, you may not spend much money. But when they are playing in Enugu, they are playing in Uyo, they are playing in Abuja, you need money, no matter how. But come to think of you traveling with 100, 200, 300, 600 supporters outside Nigeria. They will not go by road. They will go by air. It's a lot of money that we need in running the supporters club. So our main challenges has been that of funding. But I can assure you that God has been good to us. We have had some philanthropists, some organizations who have come to assist us by way of supporting us, giving us a lot of money. And if you will not mind, I will have to put it on record that the very first company that supported Supporters Club was Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola did it for 2 years. They could no longer do it. Then for 1 year, MTN did it. They could no longer sustain it. Well, later we got Globacom. Dr. Mike Adenuga Jr. has been the brain, the backbone, the sponsor and the financier of the Supporters Club for several years, doling out millions from 50 to 60 to 100 million of naira, and even in dollars. So that has been the way, that has been how we have been able to surmount it. We have some philanthropists. We have Taiwo Afolabi, who has always supported us whenever we are going out. I remember Alhaji Aliko Dangote in 1996 He supported us, and some other Nigerians too. Esther Ajayi, when we were going to Russia, 2018, I went to this woman and I told her our problems. The second day, she was able to give us 20 million. I went to meet the then governor of Lagos State, His Excellency Governor Ambody. He gave me 10 million. The club, not me per se, he gave the club. And when we were going to Brazil in 2014, that was the very first time any government supported us. We went to Brazil. Before going, I visited the then president, Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. After decorating him as our patron, he pronounced a 50 million naira grant for us to go to Brazil. Actually, we were going to request from him a whole plane to take us there because we were going for a national assignment. Supporters Club is a selfless service. But the president gave us 50 million. I mean, good luck, Jonathan. But we ended up spending 189 million. The difference of that was raised by me going to Dr. Mike Adenuga, Taiwo Afolabi, Esther Ajayi, Ambode, and the rest. That's how we've been running the club. We've been running the club, meeting people who lost the game of football, who lost Nigeria, and they have been helping us. Well, very, very unfortunate. It's a story I hate to be talking about all the time because I've said many things about it more than 100 times. Supporters Club had been there for several years. And Dr. Rafiu Ladipo was the national chairman for just 10 years, from 1990 to 2000. I left that position in 2000. And then somebody else became the national chairman. And that was Alhaji Waidi Anderile Yusuf, who was the chairman for 8 good years. After him, there was Otumba Olatunde Bashorun. He was there for 4 years. And there came a time when one Mr. Vincent Okumagba acted in that capacity for 3.5 years. And there was one little misunderstanding, because people will not want to wait for their time. And all I told them is, please go through an election. Anybody who would not want to go through an election is not supposed to be on that chair of the national chairman. That's what came up. And the then NFF believed that there could be 20 arms of supporters clubs in Nigeria. It could even run to 100 units. But it's unhealthy. You cannot have a situation where your team is playing right on the field and you have different corners where you have the Nigerian supporters scattered all over the field, singing in different voices. It's not good. But look, I've been able to manage it because God has told me that supporters must not die. Supporters Club will not die. I have to be patient to let them see reasons why the Supporters Club should go and support the teams with unity. As a unit, go and support the team. But if you have funded your own, maybe you have registered your own, you have your own office, you can stay in your office. Manage your office the way you want to manage it. But when it becomes a national assignment, you are going out to represent Nigeria. All of us as supporters must come together to support Nigeria as a group supporting one team. Not when you have some people in angle 90, some people in angle 180, some people in angle 360, some people in angle 60, supporting one team. It does not augur well. There's nothing you are going to achieve from this. I remember when we were in Russia, and my members have gone in. I normally wait for all of them to go in before I will finally go in. So when I was going in as the last person, I entered the stadium, and I saw them, some people up there, I saw some people on the left, I saw some people on the right. And when I was going to meet the band boys, some of their security men came to me, I'm in Russia, and asked me where I was going. I said I was going to meet my people. They said I should bring their ticket, my ticket. And when they saw the ticket, no, you can't go there, go there. That place is not yours. Your seat is downstairs there. How do I coordinate the activities of my members? This is what we've been telling them. Supporters Club must be united. They must come together, sing together, cheer the team together, and let us have a befitting result. When the referee and all the match officials see a group of people, even if you are 200 or 300, converging in one special place together, in your uniforms, in your green and white, and you are singing, they know you have come to support your team. So it takes them every reason to want to do the game better. Well, you are not there. In a capacity crowd of 90,000, we had 5 supporters here, 2 there, 7 there. When the Argentines were about 87,000 in the field, singing for their team. So I believe that the Supporters Club must be together. I've been able to manage it now, up to now. The national chairman of the Supporters Club as we speak is Reverend Samuel Ikpeya. He coordinates the activities of the Supporters Club in Nigeria. While worldwide, I'm the President General because we have Supporters Club in all the other countries of the world. And when we come together, there must be one person. There must be the head. We have the president of the Supporters Club in Cote d'Ivoire. We have the chairman of the Supporters Club in UK. In all Francophone countries, the head of the Supporters Club is called president. In Anglophone countries, the head of Supporters Club is addressed as Mr. Chairman. So the President General is not just what we just came out with. It's because there's a need for it. That's why the President General worldwide comes up. Well, I have told you a lot of people don't want to wait for their time. And when you don't wait for your time, what do you lose? You lose much. There was going to be an election. And I called all of them, go and pick your nomination papers for the election. But some of them would not want to because they want appointments. And I don't believe in appointments because we have a constitution in the Supporters Club that says everybody and anybody who wants to be an officer must contest for election. I insisted that there must be an election. Some people would not want an election because they know, probably they believe they cannot win. They decided to say, oh, let's go our way because we don't want election. That's it. Before now, up to about 8 years, 10 years ago, the Super Eagles were really super. But in the last 8 years, we have not been there. We have not been doing well. Don't forget that in 1994, Nigeria's team, the Super Eagles, were judged to be the 5th best in the world. What is our ranking now? 37th in the world. Even in Africa, what is our ranking? So the Eagles of the last 8, 9 years ago, no, they have not done well at all. I want anybody to tell me, what did we win in the last 8, 9 years? Don't forget that in 1980, we won the Cup of Nations right here at the National Stadium. In 1994, we were in Tunisia. We won it. In 2013, we were in South Africa. We won the Cup of Nations. In 1996, we won the Atlanta Olympics. Since then, what can we point to that we have won? So the Eagles of the last 8-9 years, no. They did their best, but their best was not good enough for Nigeria. And that's why we didn't win nothing. But I want to believe that the present crop of Eagles being put together now, going for the Cup of Nations, we want to write their names in gold. And if that is so, it means they have to put in their best to see that going to Cote d'Ivoire 2024 will not just be going there to make a number. We're going there to give a very good account of ourselves. Who says it is not possible for Nigeria to win the Cup of Nations again? It is possible, but it takes a determined group of people as players who wants to write their names in gold to do that. When you are rating the coach, a coach is as good as his last match. Pasero was employed, he was given a target, and the NFF has the power to either sack or renew his contract. I think according to them, maybe he has performed according to what they want. But for me, as a Nigerian, I want Pasero to go to Cote d'Ivoire and show us that he is serious, and show us that the Super Eagles can still fly, and make us get minimally play in the semi-final of the Cup of Nations. Anything short of that, no. Well, I want to believe that our Nigerian coaches are good. There have been 2 or 3 foreign coaches that have done well. Westhoff, Bonfrejo, and this which doctor, what's his name again? I'll remember his name. This guy qualified us to play in the World Cup with a match to go. The witch doctor. Well, the witch coach, we call him, we remember it, now it will come back. So, since then, there's no foreign coach that has done better. I was one of the people that went to London to recruit this man I'm talking about. When we recruited him, he came to Nigeria and he made us to qualify for the World Cup with a match still to go. Philippe Trousse. I was there in England where we interviewed him. Well, since then, it has been one coach coming to take our money, not giving a very good account of us, of himself. But the Nigerian coaches, let's also praise some of them. Some of them. The late Shuaibu Ahmadu qualified us to play in the World Cup, even though he did not take us there. The late Stephen Keshi also made us to win the Cup of Nations of 2013 in South Africa. So if that happens, who says the Nigerian coaches are not good? Some Nigerian coaches have proved themselves, but they still need to do more. But these 2 coaches, exceptional. That is the real reason, the real controversy we're having between the NFF and the coaches. You don't hire a coach if you know you cannot pay his wages. You must be ready to pay his salary as at when due. There's no coach who will labor and labor, and after which he would have trained your players, and you are owing him salaries of 5 months, 7 months. Which coach will take that? Where is that happening across the world? Nobody will accept that. So that has to be looked into. And that is why the NFF has got to look for serious sponsors and raise funds for them to be self-sufficient, to be able to take all these challenges of paying the coaches wages. That is a big problem. And I think the present NFF board, led by Ibrahim Guzo, will look into that, look for sponsors, serious sponsors who are interested, not just interested, but who are genuinely interested in the Nigerian game and in the Nigerian nation. You may be interested in the Nigerian game, but if you are not interested in the Nigerian game, Nigerian nation, you may not give what it takes to do. You must have the love of this country at heart, and then love the game also. In the last 15, 10, 8 years, our boxing went down. In the last 5 years to today, our boxing has come up. I am the president of the Nigerian Boxing Board of Control, and I confirm to you that every week now, we have a boxing championship. We had one last week. Tomorrow, we will have one in Abuja. When I come back the following week, there's another one. We have promoters now promoting our boxing events. And our boxers are now earning big money, other than what they were earning before. In those days, they were earning 20, 30,000. They go on the ring, they hit them, they shed blood, and they sweat. What do they earn? But since the last 3, 4 years, our boxers have been earning big money. Some of them earning millions. Some of them traveling abroad to earn $5,000, $10,000. And that is made possible because we have a group of people in the Nigerian Boxing Board of Control who respects each other, who respect the boxers, who respects the coaches, and who respects the promoters. Take, for instance, I'm sorry to mention, Go TV. Go TV night every day. They've had about 29 Go TV sessions. You know what that means? Go TV for every boxing fight. They don't spend less than 20 million. They even spend more. And our boxing now is being watched all over the world, if not just Africa. A lot of things have been said about this. We have sent memos, we have sent advice, we have met with the people in charge severally. I've had to write to both the Minister of Sports, the National Assembly, and the rest. How can we develop our sports? It's very important. Without grassroots development, you won't be there. As a matter of fact, Kanu Nwankwo happens to be a product of the Nigerian League. J.J. Okocha, product of Nigerian League. Finidi George, Emmanuel Amunike, and all of them played in the Nigerian League. How many of our Super Eagles players, those that are playing for us now, do you see what developed here? Maybe you have 2 or 3 home-based players playing. But the real product for our football development, they are here in Nigeria. We have to go back to those things we were doing that time when we got the likes of the Segun Odegbami, Henry Nwosu, Christian Chukwu, down to Stephen Keshi, Okocha, and the rest. We have to go back. We don't have to rely on those players who have been serving us in the last 12, 15 years, believing that they will continue to serve us the same way. No matter what you do, players will get weak. They will age. And when they are aging, That's when they start referring to them as tiring legs. You need replacements for them. How do you get that? You can only get them from the local scenes. We have various clubs in Nigeria playing the leagues, the Premiership, the National League, and the rest. 20 teams in one. Do you know how many of our boys out there that can play football if we harness them, bring them together, and give them the right training? Of course, let me ask you, how many of our club sides have feeder teams? Feeder teams, they are very important to the development of the game. When you have a junior player playing the feeder team and is maturing, bring him to replace a tiring leg. In the senior team, how many of those teams that we have can boast of feeder teams? How many of them can boast of their own fields? Perhaps we have about 3 clubs that are privately owned. But others are owned by governments, state governments. And state governments, what do they use them for? For political gains. And if it is political gains, well, it's off it. Let's do football like it is done elsewhere. Football is big business. People are making billions of dollars in football. Nigeria can do same. If we do same, we will take off all this nonsense. The boys going about doing a lot of violence, going to do yahoo, going to do kidnapping and the rest. You will have all of them looking forward to becoming millionaires and billionaires in future, and of course becoming employers of labor apart from fending for their families. Above 50 football. Yeah, it's above 50. I'm the chairman worldwide for that. And my president is Ambassador Edward Olutoke, who has given his support, his finances to be able to do this game. The thing is this: if you have played football, you have played up to the level that you are about 40, and you are no longer playing, you are no longer doing what you know how best to do, you now go and sit down, not doing nothing. Boredom sets in. And within that period, rather than getting fit, you are aging. Some of them developing various sicknesses that they ought not to have. But because they were no longer doing what they know how best to do, they sit down. So the concept is bringing them back. Not just the footballers, but anybody above 50 could play football, keeping fit, and above all, living a standard life, making money. There's a way, we have one thing we are developing with the above 50 concept for you to make money. Anybody who is above 50 and has no car of ease or no house of ease or her own has not been living standard. So above 50 concept is not just to play football alone, but to help you to keep fit, to keep you healthy, and make you to live standard life and make money. That is what we are doing. And as I speak with you, Brazil has embraced it. Mexico has written to us that they will want to play with us. The last competition we had 8 clubs. Ajegule, Surulere, Redeem, Itiraikate, Abeokuta, all of them, they came to play at the National Stadium. And the prize, the winner's prize was 5 million, which was paid instantly. The second place was 2 million, while the top place was 1 million. And we put a lot of money in organizing that. We are going to start the second edition very soon. We are now having clubs from Benin, Edo. where people from Abuja, people from Kwara registering to be part of the above 50 football. How much do they put into sports? What you have in sports is noise. How much money do they put into sports? They need more money to run sports, particularly the development of the sports, not just taking part in competitions. Because if you have to develop sports, it takes a lot of money. And all those successful countries doing sports, it's because they have put money into its development. So government has got to put more money into the development of sports. Fantastic women. They've done us proud severally, having been champions of Africa for 9 times. I don't think any country in Africa can boast of that. But beyond that, we should also realize that these ladies, they are getting old. Some of them are 40, 38, 36, down the ladder. You need replacements for them. That is why we are asking that we should put more money. We should put more focus in the development of sports, both male and female. I think with what the female national team has done for Nigeria, we owe it a duty to put more money into the development of female football. I'm not thinking about that. If I want to, I would have been in politics, party politics. I would have been there, and by now I think I would have been something else. But no, I chose to be part of giving an image to Nigeria, a good image, positive one. Take for instance, if you go out of the country, you get to the entry point of any country, and you speak of our sports, they give you a wide latitude for you to go in. Well, you say when you get there, you speak sports. They ask you, where's Kanu? Where's Okocha? Where's Finidi? Where's Amokachi? That means they recognize Nigeria sports. In fact, that's the only thing we can be proud of right now. Every other thing we talk in diversities. But when it comes to sports, every one of us were together. If the Nigerian team is playing and a Christian has to pray, and he say, I pray that the Super Eagles wins today's match, in Jesus' name I pray. Even the Muslim will say amen. So together in sports, where in this country, football and sports is a leveler, particularly football. Football unites not just the states, it unites the country, it unites the countries of the world. So I believe we can do much more in promoting and supporting our sports so that we get the best benefits, as we say. First and foremost, I want to use this opportunity once again to congratulate him on his appointment. I've met him twice now, and I'm going to meet him soon again. And why am I going to meet him is to advise him on what I think from my own views and from what I've seen to improve sports. First, we have talked about it. The development of sports is key, not just the taking part in competitions. Because if you are not developing sports, you are only taking in competition. If you don't win, what happens? But if you develop sports, 1, you are helping the youth. 2, you are helping the nation. 3, you are growing the economy. And thirdly, you are removing restiveness and restlessness of the youth in the society. I want us to advise the minister to key into the development of sports from the grassroots. Let's go back to the schools. Let's go back to the rural areas. Football is played everywhere. Go under the bridges, you see people playing football. Let the minister put in place, through the NFF, a consortium of coaches that will go to these schools, that will go to these corners. Everywhere in Nigeria, you have talents that can be helped, sponsored and nurtured to stardom. Once we do that, our sports will improve. And let the minister put his feet there on ground and say, every club that is playing in the Premiership and the National League must have their feeder teams, must have their own fields and other infrastructures to make them develop sports. Thank you very much. I want to pray for this organization to continue to thrive, to continue to blossom in making money, because without money, this kind of things that I hear cannot be sustained. So God will grow you the more, and your business will continue to flourish.
Beautiful day, it's a beautiful time. Another opportunity has presented itself for us to talk about business, for us to talk about finance, for us to talk about economic issues and all that issues trending across the whole world. This is Early Exchange on Souq TV, and I am Femi Ayodele. I'm not alone as usual. I have a company. Blessing.
Good morning, Femi.
Good morning.
I am Blessing AJ, and it's great to know that you are watching Early Exchange this morning. The show is always promised to be a very interesting one. We'll take a look at several issues that will benefit you, and as we always say, make you be in a position to make informed decisions so you can profit from whatever exchange that you do in your business and even in your personal life. Straight away, let's get it over now to Ola Oluwa Awe, who will bring us updates on current happenings across the globe.
Good morning, welcome to the morning news update on Souq News. I am Olaoluwa Awe. The morning is looking promising all around the world. Let me get you that area in response to the...
Or trying to create a bigger cake by creating a bigger market. This stems from my discussion with a brewer who was complaining about the fact that the market was shrinking and also that the prices that they put up to mitigate against the higher tax on beer was resisted by customers. So not only was market shrinking, but also prices were being attacked. And to add insult to injury, a second big player has entered the market that wants to grab market share by all means. And the existing players are defending their turf. What is suffering is value because everybody is competing straight on price. And my feeling is, when an industry reaches where people are scrapping for the market, perhaps it's time to rethink what can be done by co-opetition, that is competition and cooperation, to increase the market size. This is my hypothesis. If you look at what drives beer sales, a lot of it is on the back of celebration in sports, especially football, in viewing centers. I can bet that if the national team, the Super Eagles, goes to the quarterfinal of the World Cup, the beer industry will sell more beer than they probably would have sold in the whole 2 years. And so I would say, instead of scrapping for that market that is dwindling, perhaps they should probably bring out a budget and come together and work with the Nigeria Football Association to develop grassroots football. It's long-term strategic investment, because by developing grassroots football and improving the league, which is also beneficial to the country, they're going to create the opportunity for the teams to advance to higher levels in global competitions. And that's a whole new market you're creating for your beer. But leaving this long-term strategy, which is a win-win for football, for Nigeria, and for your own industry, and scrapping for a diminishing market and destroying value, I have my doubts that that is a sustainable strategy. Rather, and this is not just for the beer market, for any market at all, when it gets to the point when we're scrapping for the dregs, maybe it's time to reimagine a new market.
Right, if you're just joining us, you have no cause to worry because the conversation is just starting. We're looking at strategic planning and economic goals, how that will affect you as a person and how that's going to affect our nation. We're being joined by Ida Hoser, who is also a strategic planner and an economic analyst. Ida Hoser, glad to have you join us.
Yeah, my pleasure to be here as always.
Always a pleasure having you around, to provide analysis and insight to. Let's look at, we're looking at strategic planning and economic goals. Let's look at the significance of having strategy when it comes to planning and setting economic goals. Let's set the ball rolling with that.
Well, the word strategy is a military term, and it speaks to what is being put in place or what choices are being made to either overrun or overpower an opponent or an enemy, as the case were. Now, when you bring this into economic perspective, what you're saying is that you are having that nations have to make choices what to do and what not to do that will give them a competitive edge over other nations. And so you have a goal. Take, for example, the current administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, whose goal is to grow the economy of Nigeria by 6% straight for 4 years. Now, what choices are before us as a nation to be able to achieve this growth that is being projected? At the present, the GDP, which was projected to be 3, is already growing at about less than 2.5%. Now, what magic do we need to do, not just to double that GDP growth, but to triple it? This is a challenge. And therefore, government is to sit down and look at how to prioritize its operations such that we will be able to actually generate that value for us. And this is where you saw, for example, the Minister of Solid Mineral coming to tell you and said, well, to what we have, we will contribute 50% to the current GDP by the time we put plans in place to develop the solid mineral. So this is what the plans are. You are looking at, you have a clear goal, you have set objective, this is vision, this is where we are going to reach. This is what we are targeting, and this is the purpose. Now, we set the goal for ourselves, and we're also now planning around that goal to see how we will be able to get to where we should get to. And in this plan, you are not just going to be mere wishing, you're going to set in place key performance indicators and key result areas where you actually want to see result happen. And they will be very well marked out. so that anybody who sees it will be able to say, oh, this is the progress we are making and we are getting closer to our goal.
Okay, taking it up from the plan of the government to triple Nigeria's GDP over a space of 4 years. Now, how's that going to happen? What are the factors that will lead to that? Let's even begin from production, which would increase the GDP too. So what plans should follow up to enable that it is not just a dream, but it actually comes to be?
Yeah, I think these are part of the things that the governments are speaking to already. If you were following the news yesterday, you will see that even when the president was in India trying to tidy up a business agreement with an Indian business mogul of an investment worth up to about $14 billion into the economy. Now, which sector that will go in is another thing to actually also determine. So what government is doing, or what government should do, is to see what critical sector we will need to invest in. This regime has said we want to prioritize agriculture so that we can be producing what we eat and eat what we produce. Nigeria has no business importing grains, for example. We can plant that locally. Now, there are also other areas where we can also invest that has some low-hanging fruits. Take, for example, we have the shoe and leather in Nigeria here, because God has also blessed us with plenty of cows, although we have turned all of them to pomo. Now, but you see, we can quickly leverage on that so that we don't import shoes, we don't import beds into this country, and invest in those areas where we can use leather, and the foreign exchange that is flying out here will be creating business here, and even to our neighboring African countries. We can leverage that. We can invest in not too complex industrial productions. These are all things that government is trying to do. Even, of course, the production of CNG car. You see, of course, some Nigerian governments also are taking delivery of some cars from Innocent Motors. All these are the things that government need to do to really steer up economic activities within the nation to grow the GDP. The real truth of the matter is that 6 is actually a moderate figure. We can actually grow the GDP beyond 6 or 12% if we do things the way they should.
In reference to a country like Nigeria and by extension to other African countries, how will you describe the approach to long-term planning? And you discover over time there are plans on table, but they don't materialize. A good example is Vision 2020. We once had Vision 2020, and we've gone beyond 2020 now. How will you describe the approach to long-term planning in Nigeria and Africa, and why do you think there are plans on table, there are plans in paper, but in reality, there's disparity?
Well, I also want to believe that when you're talking about a long-term plan, that you're not talking in terms of what we used to have, they call development plans in the early 60s and the early 70s, that has to span 20 years, 30 years. Today, really, when people are talking about long-term plan, the maximum is between 3 and 5 years. The real reason is that we are living in a very volatile world. The management experts call them, we live in a VUCA world. VUCA, V for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. Now, this is a world where every country, every business play, where technology is changing every other day, where knowledge is increasing exponentially. Now, if you have a plan that is too long, you will be taken up by events. So what people are doing really today is looking at, not too long a plan, but to see that we're actually focusing on a particular direction where you can channel your energy and put things in place for things that you can easily and quickly achieve. But like people always say, Nigerians, we are not lacking in anything written in paper. The only challenge has always been the challenge of implementation. how do we ensure that what we have written, we play by it? That's the problem. You see, there's always this competition between urgency and things that, of course, are legal here in this environment. We want to always do things urgently, urgently. We don't plan very well and execute with utmost efficiency and effectiveness. So this is a real problem. So the problem for us as a nation is more with implementation than actually with planning. And I think this is where this particular government needs to actually grow a lot of competence so that in terms of implementing whatever that is written down, the document, that we follow it religiously to see that we achieve that goal. But that comes with a lot of flexibility so that as the international environment is changing, as the dynamics of the economy is changing, we are not still fixed with what is written. So we also must be flexible enough to adjust to the reality of the current day.
Some economic analysts have argued that the reason some long-term plans of government has failed is because there wasn't a stopgap plan to make provision in the interim. So in the long run, it's either the people suffered too much or the vacuum that was created hampered the success of the long-term plan. Do you agree?
Well, I agree to some extent. When you look at the concept, for example, of governance as it's been propagated by Institute of Directors, we're told that, of course, as part of framework for governance is also risk management. It's not just a stopgap plan, it's risk management. To be able to scan your environment so deeply that you can estimate the likely risk that can make your plan not to succeed. And once you are able to isolate or identify potential risks that can impact on your core objective, then you will be able to actually work out alternative routes to reaching the same goal. And this, most of the time, we don't take very serious. And I think that the government itself must also incorporate ISO 31000 in its planning such that we can look at possible risk and what steps that can be taken to mitigate this risk so that the set goal are not hampered.
All right, Hidalza, thank you for your analysis. It's always a pleasure having you around. We'll go on another break now and we'll return to have more discussion. It's getting bigger, it's getting better, and it's getting more engaging. And that is after this short break. Stay with us.
Many thanks for being there. All right, now let's move to budget deficits and debt management. That's one issue that Nigeria has talked about for quite some years now, and it's also something that followed into this new administration. Although a new budget has not been made, the current administration is working on the one for the year fiscal budget for 2024. But the issue of budget deficits, what actually results to, we still have Idausa Osameze in the studio, by the way, you should know that. So what actually results to a country having budget deficit? And when it becomes a recurring thing, from one year to another, you have budget deficit. So how does that impact the performance of the budgets? Idausa?
Well, when you hear the word budget deficit, what should come to your heart is that you have made a plan of purchases in a fiscal year and your revenue is not enough to buy the things you want to buy. So how do you fulfill the obligations that you have put for yourself? Is that you are going to borrow. This is what it's always about, that we have a plan and you put a plan on your expenditure and your revenue, and you have a situation where your revenue cannot cater for your expenditure. Now, this is the situation where we have found ourselves as a country for a very long time, that we are borrowing every year to fund the budget because you don't have enough revenue to be able to pay for the services that you procure.
In the year 2022, which was last year, as far as the budget is concerned, Nigeria experienced a deficit of about 6.2 trillion.
Yeah.
Now, talk to us, because the gap has been raising funds locally. Why is this so challenging for Nigeria as a nation to fund its own budget without borrowing? And what are the strategies that can be deployed locally to, start generating more revenue in order to bridge this gap for?
Well, I'll pull you a little back to Ray Dalio's work, which is, of course, the causes of wealth and poverty of nations. And one of these issues that you find that is there in the circle, which the world move around, is the fact that sometimes you see when you have a period of prosperity, you see that rather than begin to save and think investment, you will be expounding your bureaucracy. And this happened to Nigeria between the period of 2009 to 2014, early 2014, when we have a lot of oil boom. Now, money was coming into the country. Rather than thinking of how to multiply what continued to come, we were busy expending money. You remember those years, even the governors had to go to the court, even when the then finance minister advocated for a sovereign wealth fund, where we can keep the excess of this money so that in the period of scarcity, we will have what to fall back on. And the governor went up to the Supreme Court to say, it's our money, we have to share it. Now, what was the outcome here was the fact that bureaucracy was expounded. We took on so much load that when the crunch came, now the people you have employed, you can't sack them, for example. So you have to manage to keep them at work. Now, the revenue that is coming to you is not what used to come. Now it's smaller. And then you now have a bigger bureaucracy to deal with. And this is the real issue. And this is the situation where Nigeria finds itself at the moment. That we are spending so much money to service debt because we have to keep this bureaucracy. And this is why sometimes it really amazes me, especially when Labour, for example, engage with government and they say, oh, we want more money. But nobody is actually thinking, where is this money going to come from? Those things are not put on the table. And then governments are forced to make promises, either to increase salary or wages, and without examining other options, either to trim down on the size of bureaucracy, because every time people talk about size, they only talk about governance, that the cost of governance is high, and House of Assembly is taking so much. But they are not looking at the bureaucracy. Take, for example, Nigeria, for example, have 1,316 agencies and departments. That's large and huge. What are they producing? They are all cost center. Only few of them are revenue centers. Now you have to cater for all this, even when you don't need them. The things that we can do with electronics, the things we can do with e-government, we are still doing them manually so that we can keep people at work, even when they are not productive. Labor will not want to retrench workers, but they will want increased pay. And they are not thinking about where the money is going to come from. And they just say government is wasting money, and therefore you have to increase our salary. This is the tragedy that Nigeria is in, and this is the problem we really need to deal with. Because if we have to come out of these issues of deficit budgeting, we must face the reality. It's either we are going to cut down the size of our bureaucracy so that the cost of government can go down. Otherwise, we must look for other alternatives to create wealth so that we will be able to meet up with the demand of this burgeoning bureaucracy.
Picking it up from the other alternative, which is creating wealth, how can government create wealth to reduce the need for borrowing and also address the issue of budget deficits?
Well, this is also a very fundamental problem. And this is where a lot of people are talking about issues with multiple taxation, which of course we speak to every day here. That of course government even need to make enough money to be able to sustain the little we are having. And therefore this is creating problem for businesses. So businesses are not really prospering. And this is why people are talking about how do we create an enabling environment for business to thrive. Reduce taxes, cut costs in doing businesses. This is the only way to go. Otherwise, we also need to invest in research and development, which of course does not really attract so much budget from our government. We need to fund research and development so that we can have cutting-edge, locally developed technology to solve our problems. And this is the only way we will be able to go about creating wealth. Otherwise, if we follow the same trajectory we have been going through, the problem is going to remain, and it's almost same.
There's this argument by some experts that for a country like Nigeria to generate more revenue locally or domestically, there's a need to sell off some national assets. There's a need to turn some projects to a viable means of generating income. If a good example was that of assets like the TBS, and some other projects. What do you think, or what's your take about this?
Well, I don't see it as a really feasible alternative. Now, how many times are you going to sell TBS?
Because once they sell, they get the
Just sell
money.
it 1 year. So after 1 year, what happened? See, this is of course, I heard this argument when ASU was having negotiation with the past regime and say, oh, we have national assets, sell them, it will be enough. Are they thinking that when you finish paying them this year, what would they sell next year to pay them? These are conversations that are not sustainable. And people must understand that when you are making a plan and putting something on the board, on the table, you must be able to project. That's why they're talking about strategic planning. How can we sustain this in the next 5 years, in the next 6 years, in the next 7 years? For me, the real way for Nigeria to go as we speak, government everywhere is going lane. Nigerians have to deliberately go lane. Now, but the argument is always this. No, we are already talking so much of unemployment. There's no employment. People don't have employment, and you want to reduce workforce. If you reduce workforce, you create more trouble. Not really, not necessarily. What you will do is that if you are able to trim the size of your workforce, that the work that technology can do that human beings don't need to do, which means you will be able to pay the people who are working well. As we speak, the people who are working, they are currently not being paid well. And so what they earn cannot take them home. And this cannot oil the wheel of the economy. Now, when you pay people well, they will be able to buy luxury goods. They will be able to pay for informal services. But we don't want to go that route because we are thinking that if you just trim civil service today, oh, everybody will die. We won't die. We will begin to look out for alternatives to survival. I said here before, when, of course, a conversation on how it's going to happen to workforce with the invention of humanoids and robotic happened in the UAE, the first thing that the government did in the UAE was to think how their civil servants had to get an exit strategy. They gave their civil servants in the UAE opportunity to go test their hands in business and gave them sabbatical option for 1 year.
Okay, would that approach not be equal to solving the problem in one area and creating another in a different area? For instance, if government has to trim its workforce, then it has enough money to pay for the wages of those who work. It probably has enough money for the budget, but a lot of persons will be out of job. Would that not increase insecurity, people looking for any available alternative to a means of livelihood?
Yeah, I agree with you. But you see, what I'm saying in essence is that it's either we are ready to solve our problem or we have to remain where we are. For me, if we are deliberate in solving our problem, which is a national problem, the problem of poverty, the only way to go is to have a government that is lean enough to be able to pay its workforce well and attract good brains who will drive the process of designing policies. Then we have efficiency in terms of revenue collection. You can imagine a situation, just check that out. If you look at the report of the second quarter, check what various industries collected and the cost of collection.
But
this is a problem.
I don't know other creative ways government can handle this issue. The issue of budget deficits became more when revenue from oil began to drop. What if government looks at other ways of generating revenue besides taxation? We have solid minerals, we have other things. And can that not be more creative than actually laying off some workers?
Now, when you are talking about to be able to get revenue from solid mineral, on this set, when Magwe Kefas was here, he said to you, it's a heavy investment. Where will government get money to invest in solid mineral? This is a real issue. Now, we have not been able to provide the right ecosystem that we really attract foreigners to come put their money in this environment because of security challenges. So this is the issue. Government has so much in its hand to deal with. For you to create that enabling environment, a whole lot of risk had to be taken. A whole lot of sacrifices had to be made. Now, if we are not willing to make sacrifices and we are thinking that money is going to fall down from the moon for us to develop, I don't think that option is sustainable.
All right, let's look at, we've been talking about this for a while now. Let's look at the factors responsible for budget deficit. Or in practical, maybe in economic terms, is it possible to avoid, to, experience budget deficit? Has it been be the situation in other world or in other part of the world? Let's look at factors responsible for it as far as Nigeria is concerned, and then what can be done? What are the strategies that can be put in place to reduce the effect?
Now, there are a lot of factors that we will need to consider here. Number one, infrastructure deficits. Now, you need to build world-class infrastructure if people are to come to your environment to invest. Now, we have a lot of deficit in terms of infrastructure. This is a problem. Now, you have a lot of debt obligations already in your hands that you have to grapple with. Now, we're being told that over 90% of our total revenue is used to service the debt we already owe. This is a fundamental problem. Now, if you spend 90%, for example, of your revenue, which means what is left for you to spend in the next year is just about 2%. So this is where the real issues are. And this is why, of course, you see the current regime is talking about not borrowing more, but to see how to broaden the base, for example, for tax, so that a lot of people are captured in the net, and then government have to work within its means in solving its problem. But that will also involve, take for example, we're also dealing with a lot of issue of poverty. And that's why people are talking about interventions, social interventions. Oh, you have removed fuel subsidy. It's affecting everybody. Government need to intervene. Now, how do you intervene? You have to borrow money to intervene. Now, this is the issues that are responsible for the deficit. Now, these issues have to be faced frontally if the deficit situation or scenario must go.
All right, thank you very much, there. So now, while you were talking, you talked about government spending, government not having enough to spend. But one of the issues that have been raised is that it's not necessarily about government borrowing. It's about what government is spending, what it borrows on. Now, to talk more on that, we have joining us via Zoom, Dr. Olusoye Ajuwon, who will be looking at fiscal policy and government spending. Good morning, Dr. Ajuwon.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Now, we've been talking about budget deficits and debt management. So, like I said, so the question for some has not actually been government borrowing, but what does government spend its borrowings on? Do you share that sentiment?
Yes, that is absolutely true. What is government spending the money, being borrowed on? You see, I always tell people that managing government is the same thing as what happened with one's income. When you look at it at the micro level, then you'll be able to understand what is happening at the macro level. Micro level in the sense that when you look at your own personal income as a family man, if you are borrowing money, to cater for consumption, the problem would be how will you be able to pay back? And that's the problem that Nigeria has created, on ourselves now. We have borrowed money to the tune where 90% of our resources is now servicing the debt. So if your income is not enough before, and that's why you are borrowing, and now 90% of your resources is now servicing the debt, how will you now be able to survive on 10%? So we can see that we are in a precarious situation, and which require a very, very solid and what's it called, fiscal discipline to take us out of where we had put ourselves. It's a very, very serious situation, but people really don't want to understand. It's as if government have access to unlimited resources. You see, the way we are in Nigeria, we are just like a little baby who does not want to know whether the father has money or not. All that matters to the baby is, Daddy, I need ice cream. And if Daddy cannot provide ice cream, we start crying. The baby does not want to know how the father is going to get money to buy the ice cream. That's the way we are behaving in Nigeria. And we need to start telling ourselves the bitter truth that Nigeria is a poor country, and we need to manage our resources properly.
All right, talking about Nigeria, you emphasize that I'm sure that's debatable when you say Nigeria is a poor country. Some might not agree, some it's debatable. Is it about lack of funds, or the willpower to generate more funds, or to manage the funds? I want you to speak to this.
Yes, it is the access to the funds itself, the resources that Nigeria have. People believe that because we have oil, and that with the oil revenue, Nigeria can solve all the problems. And, I'm always telling my students in class that let's look at the money that comes in through oil. Let's assume the whole money is going into the government purse. We know it's not going to the government purse. Let's multiply, our daily production, the price of the oil, multiply by the number of days in the year. By the time you calculate that and divide it by the population, we realize that at the end of the day, each what's it called, citizen will be averaging $200 or $300 in a year. So what can you do with 300? Let's assume it's $300. What can you do with $300 in a year? So when you look at that, you will know that Nigeria is very, very poor. So that's the mathematics I want all of us to do. Let's sit down. Let's look at the oil that we produce per day. Let's multiply it by the price of the oil and multiply it by 365 days. And now when we get that, divide it by our population and see what we will get. If you can get anything above $300, then say I'm a liar. Then you will know that Nigeria is actually a poor nation, because that's our major source of foreign exchange. Then when we are talking about the labor force in Nigeria, one thing we have done is this. When we look at the percentage of government employees, you know, I belong to a group where we have done this over and over. We look at the percentage of people working for government in Nigeria, fix our population. We realize that we don't even have up to 2% of the population. Meanwhile, when we look at what is happening in UK, when we look at the population of labor force, fix the population of UK, we are getting around 8%. But why is it that, you know, if the government is employing less than 2% or thereabout in Nigeria, why is it that government cannot pay that 2%? The truth is this: the labor force we have in Nigeria, what are they doing? Are they really doing the work that will generate the revenue for government to be able to pay the appropriate salary to the workers? You know, the way we do things in Nigeria is, once you get a job with government, you believe, yes, you are settled. And you know, it's an entitlement mentality. You just sit down without doing anything. After all, at the end of the month, you will collect your salary without bothering how the government is going to get that resources to pay your salary at the end of the month. That's the problem we are having. You know, we are not being productive in this country. We just believe that government have access to unlimited resources. We need to start understanding, just the way an individual collects salary, that's the way government also collects resources. And if you don't do anything, the way your salary rewards, if you don't work, in my religion I belong to, which is Christianity, if you don't work, you are not meant to eat. So the same thing with the country. If you are not productive, then where do you want the resources to be paid a salary for you? Where do you want it to come from? So we need to start telling ourselves that gospel truth.
All right, two things. I'm going to ask you two questions, but let's get the first one first, and that is shoring up revenue. Government, for now, majorly gets revenue from oil, but that is not enough to take care of the country. So how can government shore up revenue? And then the second one is, you've talked about the workforce of the government not being productive enough. What kind of structure should or would have ensured that they are productive? Because it seems like it is based on the job description. If you go to the civil service, a lot of the things that they do are clerical. So what structure should be in process to ensure productivity that translates to revenue generation of the ministries and department agencies that government has?
Yes, to start with the number one point, when you look at the percentage of GDP that government is collecting as tax in this country, it's one of the least in the world. You know, it's between 6 and 8%. It used to be, you know, below, but now, you know, we are doing better. So government is generating between 6 and 8%. When in some country, government is generating between 30 and 40% of the GDP as tax. In Nigeria, government is only collecting between 6 and 8. So the starting point is the tax need to increase. So, you know, we need to, in fact, at whatever we need to do, government needs to be generating between 15 to 20% of the GDP as tax. So that's the starting point. So that's the way to go. We don't pay tax. And, you know, in this country, most especially the rich people, they don't pay tax. And, you know, when you look at the atrocity that has been happening in this country, you know, the oil, they are the ones that are enjoying it, not the poor people. And you know, it's the poor people that is giving them the opportunity to continue to be exploiting us. The poor people will say they must not remove subsidy. Why are the people enjoying the subsidy? Is it not the rich people? Let me give you an example. One rich person went to the filling station to buy fuel into his car, one of his cars. one of his SUV, and he spent 60,000 naira to buy fuel. And I can bet it with you, he will not spend, within 1 week, that fuel will finish. So if it was before, he would have paid 20,000 and government would have given him 40,000 naira subsidy, to use his car. So at the end of the month, for that one car alone, government will be giving him 120,000 naira to maintain his car, to fuel his car. That's one of his cars. He might have like 4 or 5 cars. So in the month, government will be giving him like 200,000 or more for not doing anything to government. And we are now saying, the minimum wage is 30,000 naira. When we are paying rich people over 200,000 naira every month for not doing anything, for being rich. So those are the absurdities that we have in this country that must change. Thank God the subsidy has ended now. People are importing things, people are buying things that they are supposed to be paying tax. They be giving them, exemption. They be giving them tax holidays and things like that without properly looking at it. In what ways? Because if you want to give somebody tax holiday or whatever, it must be so that it will encourage productivity. But, once you are rich, you enjoy. The poor are the ones that should be laying the golden egg. Those are the issues that we need to look at. And when you look at, the second point that you raised, that, most of the staff are clerical, is the mentality of the ones you call the labor force in Nigeria. If we know that this is like a business, that money must be generated, if you have that mentality, then with that mentality, things will change. So don't tell me that, the work of civil servants are clerical or whatever. No. They are supposed to go with the mindset that, yes, I have to make things work. When things work, that is when money will come into the country and will make a better life. So with the way you are working your work, you have to do it in such a way to encourage productivity, not to discourage productivity. People will go to the ministry and they'll be spending hours or days on something that can be resolved within 5 minutes. Those are the things that is affecting productivity. If you don't bribe, if you don't want it, they won't allow you to grow. They will frustrate your enterprise. Then we are now saying we are poor, and you are telling me that it's clerical work. It's the mindset, it's the mentality of the civil servants in Nigeria. We are supposed to have the mentality of a business orientation, that things must work to be able to generate more revenue. When we have that mentality and we are working with that mentality, money will start flowing.
All right. The Fiscal Responsibility Act spelled out that there's a need to keep budget deficits under 3% of the GDP. That of Nigeria, as we speak, with the figure released last year, is a little bit above 3%. Can you speak to us? How can we maintain a healthy benchmark so that Nigeria will enjoy a better economic growth and development when it comes to the benchmark for our budget deficit compared to what is being spelled out in the Fiscal Responsibility Act?
You see, when we are talking about debt and GDP ratio, in fact, some people will tell you that Nigeria debt is far, far below, the standard and all those things. You see, what they are not looking at is Nigeria, debt GDP ratio cannot work because the tax we are collecting from GDP is how much? So where, they are saying that 3% of GDP is an economy where the tax is working well, where government can be collecting minimum of 15 or 20% of the GDP. So if that operates, that is where, 3% debt ratio will work. But in Nigeria, we are supposed to be looking at government revenue fixed debt ratio, not GDP. And that's the mistake we are making. If you are looking at GDP debt ratio, we will think that, yes, we have room, we have wide room to borrow. Meanwhile, when you want to pay that money back, it is government that is paying the money back, not the GDP. I've been saying it, the amount that government is collecting as tax is about the least, one of the, lowest in the world. You are paying, you have 6 to 8% GDP, and now your debt ratio is over 3% GDP. You are already creating room for a serious problem, because it's like, you have an income of, let's say 100 naira, and your debt servicing is already consuming 90 naira. So how will you survive on 10 naira? So now to add the leeway to be able to have more room, the best thing government needs to do at this level is to increase the tax rate. How they are going to go about it, it's for government. I'm not in government, but it's their duty to ensure that people that are not paying, their tax, they get it out of them.
All right, in increasing taxation, isn't government supposed to do one part or one duty to ensure that it is not just an increasing taxation, there is the ability of the business or the businesses to pay the taxes? Let's look at government spending again. The areas government allocate funds to, are there priority areas that government should allocate spendings to that will make those areas more productive and make the ability of businesses or the industries from that sector to pay tax more feasible?
Yes, you can see what the present dispensation are, working into. I've been working at the Minister of Solid Mineral Resources, came out and said that that's the reason why, he has the president to put him in that, what's it called? Because there's a lot of revenue in solid minerals in this country, and we only pay attention to the oil. Look at in Zamfara. They have gold there. There are so many mineral resources in the north, and what they are doing is they are just, exploiting it within themselves, doing illegal mining. So I think government needs to do a lot in the area of mineral resources to ensure that those resources are annexed and the appropriate, resources, appropriate, what do you call? There is a term we use for mineral resources, the rents and all those things is coming into the government purse. So we have to ensure that all the resources we have in this country are annexed properly so that government can collect the rent appropriately from all those resources. That's one way. Then number two, we need to look at what we are very good at doing, what our cultures and all those things. You can see in this part of the country, we are very good at entertainment. Government should look at the entertainment industries and see how they can come in to actually develop it well and, maximize the resources that can come in from it. So we need to look at all those things we are very good at doing and let government come in, develop it, and as well ensure that they maximize, government's return in those sectors.
All right, let's talk about this issue of budget performance. Over the years, the ratio or the statistics for Nigeria has not been impressive when it comes to budget performance. And you have situations that money are not being returned, after that fiscal year. Now that Nigeria is planning for 2024, what are the suggestions you can put on the table to ensure that we improve our budget performance and then adequate management of resources or money that are being budgeted for?
I'm always involved in budget preparation, and I know what is happening there. Now it is very, very difficult for anybody not to return, the money into the government purse, into the government cover at the end of the year. Anybody trying that, you are already, signing for jail, because if you are caught, you can't escape it. But when you look at the problem we are having, with the budget performance, it is actually increasing these days. It still comes down to what I was saying about the civil servants' mentality to work, because everything still comes down to civil servants. They are the ones that have this budget. They are the ones to work with this budget. And whatever they do is what we see at the end of the year. If at the end of the year we say, okay, we want this budget of this amount, then, if at the end of the year we are having 40%, 60% performance of the budget, then ask the civil servants. They are the ones that didn't do what they are supposed to do. Then not only that, another problem we are having with the budgeting in this country is that we are not being realistic on, what we base the budget on. Because when you are saying that, okay, this revenue is coming, You look at the situation of things in the country properly. You are expecting revenue that will come in from oil. When you know what is happening in the oil industry, and based on that, you put your budget that, okay, you will spend this money. And when it is time to spend the money, the revenue has not come in. So how will you be able to implement the budget when there's no money, to implement the budget? So those are the issues, with the budget planning and budget implementation. So we need to align to ensure that, our budget is appropriate, that is, it meets the need, meets the demand, or rather, the supply meets the demand. We need to ensure that the resources that we cater for what we have budgeted for is on ground. If not, what we are seeing now is what will continue to be seen. But what is always happening is when it is time to implement the budget, to realize that the resources is not there, and that's what is creating the problem. It's not about, it was in the past. What the civil servants normally do is they will not allow the budget to come out early enough, so that when it was towards the end, they will now rush, so that at the end of the day, they will say they made mistakes, and they'll be able to appropriate something to their own personal pocket. But that is being taken care of now with the all these technology innovations that we are putting into the budget planning and implementation. The GIBMITs, the IPPIS, the single treasury accounts, and all those things. So before you can spend any money, it must be approved.
Okay, let's look at fiscal policies of government. Taking, for instance, the social investment programs. We have some social intervention programs. Now, some people see that as a waste of money for government, maybe because they're looking at the process of distribution of some of this social investments and how it may not get to the grassroots or to the vulnerable people. They tend to look at it from the angle of teaching a man to fish rather than giving him fish. So do you see that as one way government is not effectively appropriating some of its resources?
You see, that is how we are getting it wrong. Because when you look at what we are implementing in Nigeria, it's not, it's something that has been done in so many parts of the world, and it is working. So I see no reason why people are always, working against what government is doing. We are the one holding ourselves down in this country. Government says they want to give 8,000 to people, certain number of millions of people for 6 months. And people are like, what is 8,000 naira? And, and all those things. By the time, those 8,000 naira get to where, the government wants to put it, you realize that 8,000 naira matters a lot. But you see, it's a noble policy that we are supposed to allow to work. But Nigerians, because of lack of trust and all those things, are the people getting it? Some will say that they don't know anybody. You must know the people getting it. The data is there. They've collected the data. They have the ones they want. Let them implement it. But no, it is a way of what's it called? Political rewarding the people that voted or whatever that canvassed. That's the way we are always interpreting things in Nigeria. Instead of us, if you are interested in it, go into the field. Go into the communities and go and ask the people that are enjoying. What's the job of the NGOs? So instead of us castigating, the government policy, we are supposed to be ensuring that this thing actually is working. It's not by stopping it. It's not by destroying it before it starts. It is by ensuring that truly they say they are spending this money. These are the people getting it and all those things. Not by sitting down in the corner of our room and destroying the government policy. It's a noble policy that should be allowed to work. They are doing it in so many parts of the world, and it is working. And it will work in Nigeria if you allow it to work.
Talking about generating more revenue locally, there's this argument or school of thought that maybe if Nigeria will have to start selling some of its assets, we'll have to some projects, viable projects, to generate more income, to generate more revenue locally. I would like to have your take on this school of thought or this argument that selling of assets could also bring revenue apart from taxes and all that.
Yes, especially in the situation we have found ourselves now. Nigeria needs to sell some assets, to have a lean room, a free room to be able to operate properly. A good example is all our refineries. I always ask when people are saying that our refineries needs to be working, government has not. It is not the duty of government to be operating refineries. I am saying it again. It is not the duty of government to be operating refineries. Those are the channels through which they are draining our resources in this country. All our resources, all our refineries, they are supposed to be sold, not spending money in renovating them. They are supposed to be sold. I am saying this and I keep saying it. We don't need to be spending money on refineries. We are supposed to sell them. Let private individuals, let companies, let firms who knows how to operate refineries profitably take over those refineries and let them be the one doing the job. It's not the duty of government. It has nothing to do with government.
Let's look at the some of the ways government generates revenue apart from oil sector. The non-oil revenue comes from taxes, custom duties, and even grants. So taking custom duties, for instance, how can government increase revenue that comes from custom duties? Because what we find is that some importers would rather use the ports of neighboring countries rather than come through, have their products come through Nigerian ports. What are the issues and how can they be addressed?
Yes, that's one area which government needs to be generating a lot of revenue. Why are importers preferring to import their using foreign countries to import when we have a better, well-equipped port in Nigeria? So those are the areas where civil servants are not doing their duty, they are not doing their work. You see, if you go to Cotonou, what you will spend 3 weeks to clear in Nigeria, in 3 hours, you will clear it in Cotonou. So why will I not go to Cotonou? So these are the things we need to be looking at. Why are people using Cotonou instead of using Nigeria? So what's special about Cotonou? What are they doing right that we cannot do right? That's the mentality of our civil servants in Nigeria that needs to be corrected. So there is no need for any importer to be using any other countries to import their goods that is coming into Nigeria. We are supposed to be using our port. But when you want to use the port, before you get to your goods, some have been stolen, or something that is supposed to take 1 hour, you are using 60 days. And yet you are still, and they will start asking you to start paying demurrage. So these are the things that needs to change. If you go to a port and go and refurbish the process completely from the bottom to the top to ensure that even foreigners will now start using Nigeria port instead of Nigeria using foreign ports.
All right, we are due for a short break now. We'll go on a break now. And when we return, we'll return to have more discussion with Dr. Ajiwan. Stay with us.
All right, many thanks for being there. We're still looking at budget deficits and debt management, even as we also take a look at fiscal policies and government spending. Because when government says it has to borrow, a lot of times people ask, what are you borrowing for? So this is some of the issues that we've been looking at with Dr. Ajuwon, who will again join us for the look at the discussion. But there is one aspect of it. There is one aspect that we need to also look at, and that is infrastructure development. Because if businesses are to thrive, then of course the necessary infrastructure to support the businesses to thrive have to be there. Because Ajuwon was emphatic when he talked about tax increasing. Government needs to increase taxation. Then government has to make it possible for these businesses to operate and thrive so that they can pay the taxes. Because if government increases taxes without providing these things, then some businesses will have to shut down.
Part of the submissions made by Dr. Ajuwon when we were speaking with him, he talked about, it's debatable. It talks about selling off of some national assets. Earlier we had Idauza who talked about, who feels is not comfortable with the idea of, or the school of thought saying that the federal government should sell off some assets. Now you have Dr. Ajuwon saying that's the way to go. For instance, he talked about the refineries. Nigeria have about 4 refineries and they've been performing below expectation, since these refineries have been created. Now you have a situation where you keep spending money, budgeting money every year. The recent one is that of Port Harcourt, which we are hoping before the end of the year, it will come back to business. You keep spending money on this project, on these resources, and yet you're not making any return, any gain. And in fact, if you look at these refineries over the years, the technology has gone obsolete. These refineries were built in the 60s. Now you have that of Dangote coming on board, Now the question is, if an individual could come up with that kind of initiative, why will a government entity not be able to sustain its refineries? And that's why there's this argument that to raise more revenues, hand over these refineries, concession them to private individuals or private businesses who would take charge of these refineries. The government will make money. There's also this argument that government doesn't need to, there's no need for government to be in business, because in this part of the world you discover that with government, businesses seem not to be doing as expected as when you have that of individual. And that is example being said by Dangote refinery. So that's the argument that, to show up revenue, to increase revenue, apart from taxing people, Nigerians are dealing with multiple taxation already. You're paying this, you're paying that, and there are some you don't even understand why you're paying. But even the tax nets have not been extended to even the larger majority, especially the rich. You have VIPs, or some people are not paying what they ought to pay. So that's why someone like Dr. Ajuwon was coming up with the argument that Nigeria, even with the present reality, the way to survive is to, sell off some of our assets so that Nigeria will generate more revenue. And I'm happy the president, the first thing he did when he came on board was to remove subsidy, which was what has been siphoning money over the years. It's mind-boggling to understand that like in Nigeria, we spend about 400 billion monthly, on subsidy. It's not sustainable. By the time you calculate that in a year, it's enough to fund our budget, and this is part of the argument. All right, Atlanta, we have Dr. Ajuwon now. Dr. Ajuwon, glad to have you join us once again. Oh, okay. Well, while we're still trying to reconnect with Dr. Ajuwon, we'll go on a short break.
Before we do that, quickly, let's look at some other issues when it comes to the issue of government not having any business in business. Take, for instance, what Dr. Ajuwon talked about, how the government should not be the one managing refineries. Well, I think we can use the case of Saudi Aramco, which is like our own NNPCL in Nigeria. Now, while the NNPC focuses on the sale of crude oil, if the NNPC could have taken on the aspect of managing refineries as well, and that would have worked very well. But I don't think necessarily it's about government not being able to manage business. I think it's about the attitude of government and some of government workforce towards business. Because if you have an agency like the NNPC, and you also have the refineries, there hasn't been problem with the NNPC selling crude. Why should there be problem with the NNPC managing refineries? Because, yes, you can have refineries that are maybe given to private individuals to manage or even sold to them. But because we know how important petrol is, we know how important fuel is, it should be looked at as a social good in some form. And we should also have government take operation of some of this, because this is something that is very critical to every sector. See how the impact of the removal of fuel subsidy impacted businesses and even people. So I think government can also manage its refineries, as well as you can open the window, you can open the door rather, and you can even have other people come into refining business, having refineries. We have modular refineries, so that's one way that can also help. All right, so Dr. Ajuwon is back. Welcome back, Dr. Ajuwon.
Thank you.
Okay, let's look at foreign direct investment, government attracting foreign direct investment. What are the ways to go about it? How can government attract more foreign investment, direct investment, and even sustain it? We've also seen that some companies some businesses that had their operations here in Nigeria had to relocate. Some of the reasons that they gave was the difficulty in repatriating funds. Some of them had issues with power, and so it made them production become more expensive. How can we attract and sustain foreign direct investment in Nigeria?
You see, when we look at what is happening in Nigeria, you will see that we are in a critical situation, and what is causing this problem is because, you know, we are highly intelligent, we are highly hardworking, but we are not challenging our, you know, all these good attributes into productivity. When you look at what you are consuming in Nigeria, you will see that the greater percentage of what you are consuming are being imported. And what are the things we are producing that we are exporting? So we will see that, you know, there is a misalignment between import and export. Majorly what we export in Nigeria is our crude oil. And we want to import virtually everything. And that is why Nigeria currency, the Naira, is losing value on a daily basis. See, when you look at the clothes we are wearing, the phone, the automobile, everything we are using is being imported. What are the things that we are exporting, you know, to cater for those things we are importing? So definitely, you know, there is a misalignment, and that is why, you know, the foreign exchange we are generating, these are fixed what we are spending, is, you know, is like 10% to 100%. I'm sorry about that. But the truth is this: until we start being productive, all the things that we can, you know, produce in this country that we are importing, we need to look at them. And that is why, you know, the previous administration said that, okay, we are not going to be giving foreign exchange to this and this and these commodities, because we believe that we are supposed to be producing them. How can we be importing chicken? How can we be importing tomato paste? You know, how can we be importing all this agricultural rice and all those things?
Dr. Ajuwon, we're almost out of time on this discussion, but quickly, in a minute, could you talk about foreign direct investment, and in what way would that help to show up revenue for the government as we wrap this up?
You see, FDI is a way of bringing foreign exchange into the country. But when you look at the insecurity in the country, fixed are fixed. Even if I come in, it will be difficult for me to repatriate my profit. Will anybody who want to come in into the country to come and, you know, invest here? So you see, these are the issues that we need to start looking at the solution for. Number one, let's look at the issue of insecurity. How can we solve the insecurity? Because where there is no security, there can't be prosperity. So for us to attract FDI, the first thing we need to do is to ensure that the security is paramount in this country. In an area where there is no security, there can't be improvement. So the way we are in Nigeria, we should stop deceiving ourselves in attracting FDI. When people, there's insecurity and people cannot repatriate their profits. So it's a no-go area for now. But definitely the current government is trying their best to ensure that they attract the FDI and give them all the support, all the what they need. But believe me sincerely,
all right, Doctor,
we need to tell ourselves in-house that we need to work on insecurity in the country.
Dr. Ajimo, thank you so much for your submission. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us. What a way to wrap up this discussion. Now we've saved the best, which is for the last, so they say. And another conversation is coming up. It's exclusive. What is it going to be? Who is it going to be? You get to know after this short break.
Value is the essence of worth, the measure of significance. There are arguments from experts suggesting that for developing countries like Nigeria to revamp its economy, improve social cohesion, redeem its international reputation, amongst others, it must pay critical attention to instilling a strong value system back into every level of the nation. For African countries to be able to hold its own in the community of nations, now and in the future, shifting the narrative from economic victims to our resource-rich and assertive partners, it would have to look at making policies consistent with its future goals. Nigeria, like other African nations, would have to do more than going cap in hand to every summit to have whatever pittance the more advanced countries decide to hand down to her, and look at how she could attempt to solving its economic, fiscal and monetary policies. It is not certain that things will change overnight, but by instilling a culture of strong value system that rewards honesty, merit rather than mediocrity, it has a stronger chance of providing a moral and ethical foundation for a nation's development, fostering unity, stability, economic growth and social progress, ultimately the overall trajectory of nation building. Juvi Ufiene, Souq News.
Welcome to Souq Exclusive. Our guest today is Sunday Adilaja, who is the founder and senior pastor of the Embassy of the Blessed Kingdom of God for All Nations, an evangelical charismatic megachurch in Kyiv, Ukraine. Now, at a time where people are struggling to read, this man has authored over 400 books. That's to tell you how much he intends to pass knowledge on to people and develop them, because knowledge is power. They just gave you a tip of the iceberg. After the report done by GVFNL, the one that talks about policy and value, let's see how this can translate to national prosperity. We had an exclusive interview yesterday with Dr. Sunday Adilaja on Souq Exclusive. So let's have the interview, and that will take us to the end of Early Exchange. Many thanks for watching, but you need to see this interview. Femi?
For me, it was an eye-opening engagement with Sunday Adelaja. You know, he's well-read. He's an author of over 400 books.
Yes.
And I find that to be commendable. And so, I can't wait to. We're looking forward to this.
Yes, it's scintillating. So we'll leave you to watch the interview on a Souq Exclusive that we had with Dr. Sunday Adilaja on policies and values and how it translates to national prosperity. Enjoy watching. Welcome to Souq Exclusive. Our guest today is Sunday Adilaja, who is the founder and senior pastor of the Embassy of the Blessed Kingdom of God for All Nations, an evangelical charismatic megachurch in Kyiv, Ukraine. Now, at a time where people are struggling to read, this man has authored over 400 books. That's to tell you how much he intends to pass knowledge onto people and develop them, because knowledge is power. Today, let's have Sunday Adilaja as we delve into his word and also the contributions he's made to the word through evangelism and other works that he's been doing. I'm not here alone to explore the word of Sunday Adilaja. Femi Ayodele is also in the studio.
He's a journalist, a writer, he authored so many books which have also blessed life and inspired a lot of young people across the world. So we're glad to have him. So let's delve into the discussion.
So what informed your decision to leave Nigeria? At what time exactly did you come to the conclusion that you needed to leave Nigeria? How has that impacted your life?
Well, I left Nigeria close to, going to about 40 years ago when I was 19. This was in the 80s. And that time, as a young graduate from secondary school, I just finished my WAEC, and I also did JAM. I got admission to the then University of Ife. I guess it's called Obafemi Awolowo University now. But even though I was living less than 2 hours away in Ogun State, I'm from Ogun State, so in a village close to Ijebu-Ode. But can you believe this? I couldn't afford to even get myself a transport fare to go to collect my results from University of Ife, 2 hours away. So we were so poor, even for me to give my WAEC was a problem, where it was a relative that heard that I was not being permitted to the exam hall because I didn't pay for the WAEC form that just, came from nowhere and settled the 50 naira fee that was needed to pay for my exams. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even given the exam. So this was the situation when I was going through newspaper. Those days, you could just go through any newspaper and see advertisements of scholarships. So I was going through, I knew that there were opportunities in newspapers. So I knew that was my only chance. So every time I had an opportunity to lay my hand on newspapers, I would look for scholarships. And voila, I got one advertisement and I applied. And there were a lot of people, applying for this scholarship. For one place, we had 1,000 people. So we had 300,000 applications. They were only going to take 300 students for scholarship. So this is how I got my luck in life. And I got a scholarship to study in the former Soviet Union.
Dr. Adilaja, your story has been very inspiring to a lot of young people across the world. I would like you to talk about What do you think is responsible or the secret of your success? You are pastoring at a point in Ukraine before the war broke out, an all-white church, about 90 or 99% all-white. What will you attribute your success to, and what has been the secret over the years?
When I was growing up in my village, I used to curse and hate on my grandmother because I didn't know my father. I've never met him. And my mother, I didn't know her till I was a teenager because she had brought me back from her previous husband and dropped me with that mother and remarried. So she was married, and I was growing up with my grandmother, and she used to take me to the bush to get some firewood and then, you know, get it arranged, put it on my head from Idomila, which was my village, to Ijebu-Ode in the morning before going to school. And then after school, the first thing was to go and fetch other set of firewood. And this was in hot sun, scorching sun of Ijebu. And so I used to curse her that, my God, why am I so unlucky in life? And why is life so difficult for me? But when I got to Russia, and my professor told me that I would never speak Russian language because without that, you would not be able to go into the university. You have to learn the Russian language 1 year before you go into the university. And he said, because I came late and I couldn't catch up with the class, he said, you will never speak this language. And I said, no, God will help me. He said, I don't believe in God. I'm an atheist. And I tell you, as your professor, you will never speak this language. If you ever do, I will become a believer. And so I said, okay, what will I do now? And I remembered that my sister had shared with me a scripture that in the book of Deuteronomy 28, verse 13, that says that you shall be the head and not the tail. You shall be you shall be first and not last. And I said, okay, so God has given me this promise. So what do I do now? So I vowed to God that I would do my best from today. I will work hard like I never worked hard before. And I said, after classes, I will not go to my dormitory, to my hostel. I will be going to the library. So from that day, we spent 7 hours or 6 in classes. After that 7 hours in classes, I normally will just go and take a lunch for 30 minutes, then go to the library. I will be in the library for the next 6 hours. And I did that for the next 7 years when I was in the university till I finished my master's. So I will always stay in the library. I would resist the temptation of going out. From Monday to Friday, I will spend 6 hours every day in the library. And then I became the best student of that university in their history, in their 25 years of history at that point. Why? Because of hard work. So I believed God, but I also worked hard. I think hard work is actually the womb of every success.
Wow, that's remarkable. Now, talking about believing in God.
I'm sorry. I'm going to complete my thought. So
okay,
the reason why I connected it to my grandmother was that this time when the professor told me I would never make it, I remember the suffering that I went through in the village. And I said, if I could survive it in Idomila, this studying in Europe in their library was like aircon. So much comfort. I've never seen this kind of comfort, even in the library or classrooms. I said, if I could survive it under the scorching sun of Africa, if I could survive it without 3 square meals, if I could survive it eating only eba and gari in all my life, this one with all this comfort. So I always refer back to my pain. My pain of the past propelled me. I will always remember that pain. And I say, I will never go back to that pain. So that pain that I endured made me to endure the lesser pain. So the greater pain of poverty, the greater pain of depravity that I had back in Africa propelled me to work hard so much that even as much as I worked, it was not as serious as the pain I was going through in Africa. So I think I'm saying that just to encourage my people back out at home who are going through poverty or pain or lack of different things, scarcity, that their pain could be the greatest secret of their success in life.
Okay, taking it from there, the concept of time. Now, you looked back to where you were coming from, and that motivated you to push forward to change things about your future. Let's bring it now to Africa. What have we gone through in the past as a continent that Africa is supposed to look back at, leverage that, use it as a motivation to change the fortunes of the future?
You see, people who are in Africa and who have been privileged to know how to read, how to write, to go to school, they should see themselves as chosen people, privileged people. Because in Nigeria, for example, about 50% of our people still cannot read or write. So we who are able to read and write, we are the elite of our societies, especially those who have finished higher education, university. So we have to look at that as an opportunity to become a ladder and a bridge to our less fortunate countrymen and compatriots. So if God has given me opportunity to even be able to read, how am I using that ability to read other than for myself? Could I just organize a class for adult education for people who cannot read or write? Anything we know, we should be using, we should be sharing it with people who don't know what we know. So if I have any insight in anything, if I have any skill, why don't I use my weekends or my Saturday, my Sunday to gather young people and share the skills that I have? If we will be our brother's keepers, if we will take our time to share whatever we have with people who don't have as much near us, Africa will become a greater place, rather than just waiting for the government or the president to come and resolve all our problems for us.
Africa records millions of people flocking to religious organizations, religion activities, events, church activities. Yet, our continent or society is still ravaged with corruption, impunity, and all that. Talk to us about the missing links and what can be done to fix them. Why do we have this kind of development in Africa in spite of our religious disposition?
Well, one of the greatest problems that we are facing is that we have embraced Christianity as a religion, but not as a way of life. So what we are doing is that we are going to church that's become like a culture for us now. And we go to church, and then when we go to church, we pray to God that God should come and help us resolve our problems. Well, that is why I wrote my book that you people probably have heard about, that only God can save Nigeria. No, what a myth. It's a myth to think that God will come and save Nigeria. I mean, people who don't believe in Christianity, like Saudi Arabia, Arab Emirates, Kuwait, all those are Muslim countries. They didn't wait just praying. In America, England, Germany, France, they didn't wait for God to come and build their countries for them. They used the principles of the Bible, the principles of hard work, the principles of dignity of labor, the principles of integrity, the principles of faithfulness in little, the principles of productivity, principles of process of production. And all those principles are from the Bible. They took those principles and build them as principles to engineer them to build a better society. But what we have done is that we have taught our people to pray and to wait on God to come and do for them what they could do for themselves. It's a tragedy, actually. Religion has become our hindrances, a hurdle in our development, unfortunately. Religion is supposed to propel us, supposed to be our propeller, but it has become a hurdle in the part of our growth.
In reference to your book, The Value-Driven Nation, you are the author of that book. Taking a clue from the lessons and some of your submissions as regards the value-driven nation, I would like you to talk about how Nigeria, and by extension Africa, be a value-driven nation, and by extension Africa be a value-driven continent.
Very good question. Number one, for us to be value-driven, we must realize that values are cultivated in the homes. So government needs to develop a program, a national program that will encourage parents to teach their children the right value systems. And we have to even give them a list of the values that we want to inculcate into our family, into our children, into our future, into our society as a fabric. That's number one. We must, teach and intentionally encourage parents to inculcate values in their children. Number two, for us to be a value-driven country, we must know that our educational system must not just teach physics and biology and geography. We must begin to teach in our schools values. We must go back to the days where we used to have civic education or ethics. In Europe, they call it ethics. We must begin to teach ethics and begin to, have as a nation, we must have a list of value systems that we want to be the basis of our society and of our country as a whole. It is values that develop nations. And until we come up with those lists of values, I have developed such lists of values. In my book, Nigeria and the Leadership Questions, I enumerated all those values that Nigerians need for development. But also, apart from the schools, apart from educational system, apart from the family, another institution that is responsible for formation of values are the religious organizations. Our pulpits are responsible either for, for propagating the right values or the wrong values. There are some mosques, for example, where people are in other parts of the world, where people have used pulpit to propagate jihad. And see what people are doing. People began to go and kill themselves, and others. That is the power of pulpit. But if we are going to use that same pulpit to propagate the right values, we will be able to build a wonderful country, just like the Europeans did. In Europe, it is what they call the Protestant ethics that are responsible for the European or modern civilization that we are enjoying today. The Protestants, people like Martin Luther, people like all the other reformers, they embraced values of the Bible and brought them out of the four walls of the church and propagated them in the society as a whole. And those values that are called Protestant values are responsible for what the Europe that we see today.
Okay, we live in a time where there is so much external influence. First of all, there is the influence of the Western practice, Western culture on the African culture, and then the exposure to other way of life through social media. So how can Africa handle this? How can homes, schools, and even government handle this to shape the values of Africans to one that encouraging certain virtues that will result to nation building, or by extension, the building of Africa?
Well, the Bible says somewhere in Proverbs that teach a child in the way that he should go, and that when he's grown up, he will not depart from that path. So the foundation is very important. If the foundation we give to ourselves, our children, our families, from home and from our native nations are good, just like I referred back to the foundation of hard work that was given to me by my grandmother, it propelled me in future to success. And it never left me because it was inculcated into my system from childhood. So whatever we put into into the foundation of character building of our children, of the society as a whole, will stand the test of time against the pressure that is coming from outside. But also, some of the values that are coming from outside are not negative always. Some of them are positive. So we should also learn to derive from the developed countries what are some of these principles that have helped them to grow and to become so developed, so that we will be able to embrace some of those as well.
As a social reformer, an author of many books, and someone who has traveled across the globe, I would like you to do a comparison of the value system in Africa to that of Europe and other continents, and because you talked about the value system, I would like you to do a comparison and let's see what Africa can do better.
Okay, for example, let me say that is a very good question, and I think this illustration will help me to pass my message across. The Bible says that righteousness or doing things right exalts a nation. Whenever you see a nation where people have been taught to obey rules and laws and principles, when they have been taught to obey rules, those nations are always exalted. When people have been taught to do things right, either they're Christians or non-Christians, believers or non-believers, just learn to do things right, then those nations will always be developed. For example, there is a famous pastor in Nigeria that everybody knows. If I mention his name, everybody will know him. And he is the one who told this story. Maybe some people have heard this story. He was traveling from Nigeria to England through the Heathrow airport. And when he got to the airport, he was stopped. And because he had a Nigerian passport, so they were saying, "What are you coming to do in Great Britain today?" And he told them, "I'm a pastor. I'm coming to see my churches here." And they said, "Okay, if you're a pastor, yesterday was Sunday. What did you preach? What was the topic that you preached yesterday?" And he said, "Oh, I can tell you, but I'm a pastor. I cannot lie." Then the custom officer said, "Oh, you are a pastor? Yes. You cannot lie because of that?" "Yes, I'm a pastor. I cannot lie." So the woman said, it was a woman, said, "So you are telling me because you are a pastor, you will not lie or you cannot lie. So naturally in your country where you are coming from, it means if you are not a pastor, then, you could lie. Or people who are not pastors, because they are connected to God, they could lie. But in this country that you are coming to, you don't need to be a pastor not to lie. Everybody doesn't, you are not supposed to lie. People don't lie here. And this is the difference. If you come to Africa, for example, you will see so many people who go to church. A large number of people who call themselves believers, but they could lie, they could steal, they could, all the corrupt people we are talking about, they'll go to one church or mosque or the other. But in Europe, you don't see people going to church so much. They might not go to church, but it has been imbibed in their society. Their society has been formed in such a way that truth, honesty, integrity has become part of the fabric of their country. So if we could succeed in intentionally teaching our people, everybody out of religion, that honesty is the best policy, that truth, love for truth is the path to righteousness and to elevation, then we will begin to see the rapid growth that we never anticipated. Because right now, no matter what the government does, somebody is stealing it. Even I heard that the railways that the government is building, some people are going to steal the rails. So what can you do now? Because of the lack of that vital quality, which is truth, love for truth, integrity, and righteousness in our people. Our people must learn to do things right, even if they don't go to church.
As a follow-up to that question, talking about the concept and disposition and orientation of Africans to timing or time compared to the Western world. In this part, there's a word you talk about African time or African timing. Talk to us about why this is significant, the orientation, the attitude towards time and timing. What's our conception about the issue of timing as far as African continent compared to the Western world?
You are so, either you've read some of my books or something, because this question you are asking, I wrote a whole book about it, and it's called How to Make Every African Country a First World Country. And in that book, I made calculations of how Nigeria's GDP could be doubled or tripled just by doing one thing, by abiding by time. Because, for example, if you take one person, let's say an average worker is making $10 an hour, just as an example, I don't know what they're making, let's say $10 an hour. And we averagely in Nigeria, everybody comes late to everywhere, at least maybe 1 hour. 1 hour goes late, 1 hour to school, goes late, 1 hour to work, goes within the whole day, 24 hours a day, our people could wait 3 hours just coming late. Now multiply that 3 hours by if 3 hours is $10, just make it it means $30 in a day, $30 into 26 days in a month, and then multiply that by 275 days in a year. You know, by the time I made all the calculations, the Nigeria economy, just by dealing with lateness alone, could be a $1 trillion economy. That is the importance of work because of time. Because time is not just money. Time is life. Time is productivity. Time, some people are producing, something in every hour. Some people are producing something in every minute, whereas we are wasting an hour going late to a place of production. And you are very correct. It's something that we must really be